those 2 days, the 2 days after the first NFL Sunday, really after the first week 1 NFL Monday, those are the longest 2 days of the year, man. Those are the longest 2 days of the year. I'm pumped. We got football back on our screen tonight. How we doing, guys? I hope we had a successful week 1. We're not going to spend any time doing week 1 victory laps. We're on to week 2. And I set the rule ahead of time that I would not do any week 1 victory laps. I'm disappointed that I did that. I actually had a pretty good week 1, but it's okay. We're on to week 2, and we're not going to be doing any victory laps whatsoever. We're live on YouTube. We're live on TikTok right now. If you can hear me okay, please let me know. Actually, if you can't hear me okay, please let me know in the YouTube chat or on the TikTok stream. We're live on both right now. What is going on? Josh, Danny, Elias, Jacob, Noah, how we doing? Fournette or Gibson? All right, we're going to get right to it, I guess, because you have to start Antonio Gibson tonight, guys. You need to start Antonio Gibson tonight. There's not a single player I'm more excited to watch tonight than Antonio Gibson. And if you come to the YouTube live, we're live on YouTube and TikTok right now, you can see my top 10 fantasy football running backs for the week. And my top 10 fantasy football running backs, if you come take a look, you're going to see Antonio Gibson on this list. Antonio Gibson comes in as my number 9 ranked running back for fantasy football this week, which means you have to start him. Anyone in my top 10 list, you got to feel pretty good about starting them. By the way, our top 10 list last week absolutely crushed it. So we got to be trusting Antonio Gibson tonight. Antonio Gibson goes out in week 1 and sees targets. And this was the concerning thing about drafting Antonio Gibson this season. It was, is J.D. McKissic going to keep stealing this many targets from Antonio Gibson? And people were freaking out about the preseason. Oh, preseason. Antonio Gibson's not playing third down in preseason football. But if you were watching closely in the preseason, though, Antonio Gibson was getting targets, and he was getting targets early and often when he was playing in the preseason. He doesn't need to play on third downs to get targets. You're allowed to get targets on first and second down. And that's exactly what Antonio Gibson has done. And so he's going to get targets, but more importantly, he's going to get the carries. He had 90 rushing yards in week 1 in a game that the Washington football team lost. And this is going to be a much different game for Washington tonight, guys. Washington's going to win this game. I'm expecting Washington to come in here and play very, very well right away, even without Ryan Fitzmagic. I'm very sad about the Ryan Fitzmagic injury, by the way. Injuries are the stone cold worst part about sports, the worst part about football, one of the most injury-prone sports in the world. And I really do hope this is not the end for Ryan Fitzmagic, because I believe this Washington football team has the chance to be a playoff team. And we did not see it in week 1, because I think the Chargers are also going to be better than I expected heading into the season. I think I was, by the way, talking about no victory laps week 1. I was like 50%, like 50-50. I think exactly 50% picking against the spread week 1, which I guess it could have been worse. But I picked Washington to beat the Chargers last week. That was a mistake. I underrated how good that Chargers offense was. And you got to understand that going into the game tonight. This is not the Chargers offense that Washington is up against tonight. This is a far, far, far worse New York Giants offense. And I'm hoping to have our Giants.WalterPicks creator and our Chargers, sorry, not our Chargers.WalterPicks, our Washington.WalterPicks creator hop on the live stream just for a few minutes at some point during the stream so we can get their thoughts about the game tonight. But guys, we're live on YouTube and TikTok right now. And if you come to the YouTube stream, I'm showing you my top 10 running backs for week 2, excuse me. And Antonio Gibson's on that list. I don't know how Antonio Gibson could be held off of any top 10 list heading into week 2 after what we saw in week 1, where he puts up 90 yards and he has an all-around great fantasy day. He scores a touchdown. Antonio Gibson is the lock of the night, guys. Antonio Gibson is the lock of the night. So get him into your lineups, 100%. The other guy that a lot of people, I'm seeing a lot of comments already about, and I'm going to try to get to as many comments as I can in the stream, I promise you, is Scary Terry McLaurin. How is Terry McLaurin going to do after a pretty down week 1? It was not by any means what we were hoping for Terry McLaurin in week 1. And sorry about that, YouTube. And on top of that, Ryan Fitzpatrick's out. So how are we feeling about Terry McLaurin now that Ryan Fitzpatrick is gone, and Terry McLaurin really did not have a great week one all around. Not a great week one for Terry McLaurin. But I'm not that worried about Terry McLaurin. I have to be totally honest with you. I'm not that worried about Terry McLaurin. If you're going to ask me, Matthew, who should I start, Terry McLaurin or Keenan Allen? Obviously, I'm going to tell you Keenan Allen, who's a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football this week. Again, I'm live on YouTube and TikTok right now. And if you come to the YouTube stream, I'm showing you my top 10 wide receivers for the week at the bottom of the screen. I can't do that. There's not a functionality on TikTok for me to do that. So you got to come to the YouTube stream at WalterPicks, or the link is in the bio, and hit that like and subscribe button, guys, if you are watching live on YouTube. But yeah, Keenan Allen is a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy this week. He's my number 9 ranked wide receiver. Keenan Allen and the Chargers this week, man, if there's one game I'm excited for, it has to be that Chargers-Cowboys game. That game, there could be points on every single drive in that game. The Cowboys offense, we already saw against a good defense, is very good. I think the Cowboys could be top 3 in points scored this season. Another team that could be top 3 in points scored is the Chargers. And again, going back to the Washington football team, because we're about to see them on our television screens just in a few hours. I can't wait for this game. But you have to understand how good the Chargers offense is, that we didn't even see how elite the Washington football defense is. That's how good the Chargers offense is. And I think they're both elite. The Washington football defense, though, is the reason that you have to take Washington tonight. I don't think I could understand taking the Giants tonight. I could easily be wrong, by the way. I was 50-50 picking against the spread this past week. But I'm all in on the Washington football team tonight. I like them -4. I like them against the money line because of the defense. It's because the Washington defense is so much better than the Giants offense. It's honestly not even close. I won't be surprised if we see just a completely abysmal performance by the Giants offense tonight in prime time. I saw, I think, a stat earlier today that Daniel Jones is undefeated against Washington, but he's never won a primetime game or something along those lines. And I think the primetime game thing is going to come back to haunt Daniel Jones again. Sam, seeing a question in the chat here. Do you have faith in Kyle Pitts this week? The Kyle Pitts stuff, guys. We got to talk about Kyle Pitts. I've been dying to talk with you all about Kyle Pitts because Kyle Pitts was our number 4 ranked tight end in fantasy football heading into this season. Looking back, I wish I ranked him number 5. I think I would much prefer TJ Hawkinson over Kyle Pitts right now, who is our 5th ranked tight end. TJ Hawkinson, absolute smash already. But Kyle Pitts, don't panic. Don't panic about Kyle Pitts. I'm not panicking about Kyle Pitts. And I know our Falcons.WalterPicks creator, I think he's panicking more than anyone I've seen about Kyle Pitts, which does get me concerned. I don't like that Andrew, our Falcons.WalterPicks creator, doesn't feel great about that week 1 game from Kyle Pitts. But guys, I've gone back. I've rewatched every single game at least once. And I was very interested in that Falcons game, that Falcons-Eagles game. The Falcons offensive line is absolutely terrible. And this is the thing you have to understand about the Falcons and why the Falcons are going to really struggle this year. I think they're going to really struggle this week especially. But I'm still starting Kyle Pitts. You still have to start Kyle Pitts. He's my number 5 ranked tight end going into week 2 still. Because Kyle Pitts is functioning as the wide receiver 2 for the Atlanta Falcons. And the Falcons are not going to be able to run against the Buccaneers. Good luck this week, Mike Davis, because you are not eclipsing 50 rushing yards against this Buccaneers defense. Never mind, you're going to be down at least 7 points in the first quarter. So, yeah, you got to go with Kyle Pitts this week. Don't panic. Certainly don't trade him. I think you can be concerned, though. Concern is totally valid with Kyle Pitts because the Falcons' offense could just crater this season. Matt Ryan, we talked about it before the season. Matt Ryan was on my do not draft list because Matt Ryan has declined each of the last 3 seasons. His fantasy points per game, if you just look at that as kind of a holistic view of a player, his fantasy points per game have gone down each of the last 3 seasons. This will be the 4th straight season that Matt Ryan declines. And so we shouldn't be that shocked in the Matt Ryan decline. But what's going to speed up Matt Ryan's decline and the entire Atlanta Falcons decline is the offensive line of the Falcons is just going to get destroyed in a lot of games this season. What about Mark Andrews? Yeah, if you come to the YouTube live, guys, I'm showing you my top 10 tight ends. My top 10 tight ends are just scrolling right across the screen on the YouTube live. Link is in the TikTok bio. And you can see my top 10 tight ends for this week. By the way, I hold all rights to change this top 10, all these top 10s, as we get closer to Sunday, because I'm going to continue to do heavy research about every game that already happened, every game that's going to happen, heading up to 1 o'clock on Sunday. So I hold the right to change these top 10 rankings before 1 o'clock on Sunday. But I know these are helpful for Thursday night decisions. And this Thursday night, in terms of the tight ends, Logan Thomas is still a top 10 tight end for me this week. I don't feel great about Logan Thomas, but I have him ranked ahead of a couple pretty good tight ends. This is one I might end up regretting, but I put him in the top 8 because I think you should be starting Logan Thomas tonight. Tyler Heineke is he that much worse? Did I say Taylor Heineke? I'm going to say his name wrong. I'm probably saying it wrong. I don't listen to the volume. I don't have volume on when I watch football games, so I say everyone's name wrong. This is like a thing that I do. It's terrible. I should honestly probably just turn the volume on, but I don't like the commentators inundating me with their thoughts. I do think you got to play Logan Thomas in most situations tonight. If we're talking about Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, obviously lock those guys in. Mark Andrews, lock him in as well. I know Mark Andrews had a down week 1, but you can't panic about Mark Andrews either. I think I saw a question in the chat about Mark Andrews. Don't panic about Mark Andrews, guys. Mark Andrews is going to be just fine. And you want pieces of the Baltimore Ravens offense. That Ravens offense is still going to be good because Lamar Jackson is the greatest rushing quarterback of all time. And so you want pieces of that offense. But really the piece you want is Lamar Jackson. But still, don't panic about Mark Andrews. I like Kyle Pitts a lot, though. I still have Kyle Pitts ranked top 6 this week. And just looking at my ranking here, I think I might want Hawkinson ahead of Pitts. I think I would probably change Pitts to 6. But after that, it's Noah Fant. And Noah Fant is a guy that I did not love going into this season, but I'm not someone that's going to be on take lock all season. I'm not going to lock onto my takes. I'm going to evaluate new information, and I'm going to change my opinions based on the new information. And look at the new information with Noah Fant, and you got to like what you're seeing. He was a pretty big part of the game plan in week 1. He had 2 red zone targets, which you absolutely love to see. That was actually top in the NFL. He had 8 targets, much more than I was expecting for Noah Fant. And Jerry Jeudy goes down in week 1. Jerry Jeudy, the lock of the season in the 7th round. Guys, Jerry Jeudy was my first big injury of the season because I had I'm in 6 different high-stakes fantasy leagues. I had Jerry Jeudy in 3 of them. 3 of them. And he was going to have such a good season. I really hope he's able to come back because these ankle injuries, especially the ones that sideline you for a long time, they can be tough to come back from. Just ask Michael Thomas. But Noah Fant, 8 targets, almost 70 yards in week 1. And then on top of that, the matchup for the Broncos this week, guys, you want every single Bronco in your lineup this week. I'm in on selling Melvin Gordon, but if you weren't able to sell Melvin Gordon this week, don't worry. Put him into your starting lineup. Sell him next week because the Broncos have an amazing matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. Guys, the Jaguars, by the way, I cannot believe I'm on air saying that I said Jaguars. I had the Jaguars as a lock over the Texans in week 1. That was my lock as a spread in week 1, the Jaguars over the Texans. And I remember saying that was more about how bad I thought the Texans were. It really had nothing to do with the Jaguars. I didn't think that much about the Jaguars. I was just very certain that the Texans aren't good. And by the way, guys, the Texans are not good. So that tells you everything you need to know about the Jacksonville Jaguars right now. The Jaguars, all of a sudden, they might actually be the worst team in the NFL, despite clearly not being the least talented offense in the NFL. The Texans offense is way less talented than the Jaguars. But the Jaguars defense lets up 30-plus points to the Texans. The Jaguars are going to get destroyed, guys, on defense in every game. You have to love any player you can get up against this defense. That includes Noah Fant this week. So, yeah, I like Noah Fant a lot this week at the tight end position as well. Those are all the guys, though, I think I would start over Logan Thomas. Gronk and Higbee, I could see the argument for starting both those guys over Logan Thomas as well. But I like Logan Thomas tonight against a Giants defense that I don't expect to do very well against tight ends this season. Should I start Henderson or Shepard? Definitely Henderson for me. Yeah, so Sterling Shepard had a great week 1, and I'm pumped about this. Sterling Shepard was one of my most drafted. Let me see if I can pull this up. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this up easily on TikTok, but he was one of my most drafted wide receivers in best ball. I did over 450 best ball drafts. Sterling Shepard ended up on like 20% of those teams. So I felt good about that in week 1, but I wouldn't be starting him over Darrell Henderson because Darrell Henderson, guys, Sony Michel saw 2 snaps in week 1, and that's going to go up. That's going to go up. I don't know why people were so surprised about that, by the way. It's week 1. Sony Michel's been there for like less than 15 days. Did we really think Sony Michel is going to walk into the building and just automatically see half the snaps? Like, I don't know who was expecting that. But Sony Michel is going to see more carries over time. But you still have to love what we saw from Darrell Henderson in week 1. Darrell Henderson was one of the biggest, massive winners of week 1. Darrell Henderson did not come off the field. He saw consistent volume and a very good offense. All right, we got a question here in the chat about a trade. Andrew Early, how's it going, guys? We are live on TikTok, on YouTube. You can see my top 10 rankings, by the way, if you come to the YouTube live, which will help answer hopefully some of these questions. I'm going to get to as many of the questions as I can, I promise. But this is an interesting one. Sam, should I trade Stafford or Tannehill for Jalen Hurts, and if not Stafford or Tannehill this week? Yeah, I think all three of those guys are good quarterbacks. I think Jalen Hurts would add another dynamic to your team because he has rushing upside that Stafford and Tannehill do not have. But it's probably Tannehill right now. If you're going to trade a guy, it's Tannehill. The Titans offense, I'm starting to get nervous about the Titans offense. I wish I was more nervous about them heading into the season. But that was a scary week 1 for the Tennessee Titans. By the way, the first second free prop of the season. Ryan Tannehill over 1.5 passing touchdowns. He had 1 touchdown like early in the third quarter, down big, and he still was not able to get that second passing touchdown. He ends up running one in too, which was just adding injury to insult to injury. But guys, the Titans offense, they lost their offensive coordinator this offseason. They lost him to Atlanta, and good luck succeeding in Atlanta with that offensive line, Arthur Smith. But the Titans now have a new offensive coordinator, and I absolutely hated what I saw out of the Titans offense. I went back, I rewatched that game twice, because how did the Titans struggle this bad? The Cardinals secondary is not that good. They literally had their top corner retire weeks before the season in Malcolm Butler. Yet the Titans go out there, throw for 1 passing touchdown. Julio Jones, A.J. Brown have mostly a pretty disappointing day. A.J. Brown ended up catching a touchdown that saved his day. But you got to be really disappointed in that offense, and I'm nervous about Ryan Tannehill. I would not be starting Ryan Tannehill this week. Sure, that offense has enough firepower to bounce back really quick, but they really didn't seem to have the same offensive scheme as they did last season. They were actually bottom 5 in the NFL in play action percentage. Last season, they were top 3 in the NFL in play action percentage, and that's a big deal. Play action is good. There's been a lot of studies, a lot of really good analytical studies on play action in the NFL, and there's actually been a lot of proof that you don't need to establish the run for play action to work. Play action actually just works almost all the time. It almost always benefits you to run play action. So the Titans did that top 3 in the NFL last season. That was great for them. And it makes sense that it works for the Titans too. Look how the Titans are built. Of course you're going to bite on the play action against the Titans. Why would you not at least fake it to Derrick Henry if you're going to throw the ball? So please, Titans, run a little bit more play action for Ryan Tannehill and Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. All right, we're going to get a lot of Saquon Barkley questions tonight, so I'm gonna address it. We got to address the Saquon Barkley thing. First of all, if I told you to start Saquon Barkley in week 1, which I know I told a decent amount of people to start Saquon Barkley in week 1, I apologize for that. That was a miss. And by the way, all season, I'm going to be very, very transparent about when I am right and when I am wrong, especially when I'm wrong. I was wrong about Saquon in week 1, and I by the way, all offseason I expected him to play week 1, so I was right about that. I was wrong about how much he was used. And he looks good, but really the concern for me all offseason was not the injuries for Saquon, and it's still not the injury concerns that I have for Saquon. And there's valid concerns about his touches right now, but long-term, can we talk about Saquon Barkley long-term for a second? Because long-term, I'm very nervous about him. The Giants' offensive line is atrocious, horrible. It's why the Washington football team is going to destroy them tonight. It's why you can't pick the Giants to win this game, because the Giants' offensive line gives Saquon Barkley absolutely no chance. Go back and watch that game from week 1. Saquon Barkley, on his few touches, he's juking several players and just getting back to the line of scrimmage. Like, what? Why are we wasting Saquon Barkley on the Giants? It's just brutal. I would not start Saquon Barkley tonight. I wouldn't. I don't think you can start him against a good defense. And based on what we saw last week with the limited touches, he saw less than 15 touches last week. I can pull up the numbers to give you the exact numbers in a second. But he saw less than 15 touches. Obviously, a fully loaded Saquon Barkley is going to get at least 15 touches every game. This is why when he was a rookie, in his first 7 games, he went over 20 fantasy points every single time. He didn't miss a beat. And he didn't even need to score touchdowns because he was getting so many touches. It's like what we see with Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, guys, by the way, Christian McCaffrey has gotten over 20 fantasy points in over 90% of his games the last 3 years. The last 3 years, he's over 20 points in 90% of his games. Christian McCaffrey, imagine not taking him first overall. If you didn't take him first overall, you clearly were not paying close enough attention to what Christian McCaffrey is and what he does. He goes over 20 fantasy points without scoring touchdowns. Almost no other running back can do that. But yeah, you look at week 1 for Saquon Barkley, 10 carries, 3 targets. 10 carries, 28th in the NFL. 3 targets, 25th in the NFL at the running back position. So you don't feel good about that. And if he sees similar volume tonight, which he easily could, then you need to bench him. Just the fact that that's possible, you have to bench Saquon. But then you add in the fact, yeah, I'll put in Jackson, I will. And I will answer that question. I would go Damian Harris, by the way, over Gaskin and Saquon. But I would definitely be benching Saquon tonight if you have a reasonable option behind him. All right, I'm going to show my top 10 wide receivers really quick on the YouTube Live. Come to the YouTube Live, guys. If you're on the YouTube Live, thanks for tuning in. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button because we're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers this season, and we can't do it without every single one of you. So thank you. Thank you for hitting that like button and that subscribe button. But yeah, I would not be starting Saquon because on top of all of this, on top of all of the touch concerns, there's also very real concerns about this offensive line. This offensive line could be bottom 5 in the NFL. I think you could realistically make it bottom 3. Look at how they played in week 1, and it's just brutal. Almost every single snap, it's like just Daniel Jones actually played okay in week 1. But the offensive line just gave Saquon and Daniel Jones no chance. I don't think they're going to be able to stop Washington's defense. And then I do think you got to take into account week 1's Washington matchup too into this consideration here. Again, going back to the game tonight, and this is very relevant for Saquon Barkley too. And honestly, this whole game, looking at week 1 for the Chargers had such an amazing plan of attack in that game. That was such a good game to go back and watch. If you're going to go back and watch any game, well, go watch that Chargers-Washington game before this game tonight. The Chargers game plan, they threw the ball so quickly. Every single time Herbert got the ball, he was, I think, top three in the NFL in terms of time to pass. So he was throwing the top 3 fastest in the NFL. He did not do that last season. This was a specific game plan for the Washington defense because the Washington defensive line is so good that you want to throw the ball quickly. Well, good luck throwing the ball quickly, Daniel Jones. We're going from Justin Herbert beating this Washington team to Daniel Jones on the road against a very good defensive line. And the Chargers offensive line also played pretty well. And again, the Giants offensive line is trash. This is 2 completely different teams that Washington's going up against, from the Chargers to the Giants. For all those reasons, I think you got to like Washington tonight. I think you need to bench Saquon Barkley tonight. I would bench Saquon Barkley tonight. And the good news, if you have Saquon Barkley, is he's going to turn it around at some point. At some point, they have to give him the ball more. And once that happens, he's just going to be a locked-in starter every week. That's why you drafted him in the first round of your fantasy draft. So don't panic about Saquon. But also, if you have a good option, I probably would bench him. All right, that's enough on Saquon. I think I answered that one pretty clearly. Tyson Williams or Gaskin. Tyson Williams, oh my God. See, I run into this conundrum all the time now, where this is my full-time job right now. I'm analyzing fantasy football. I'm running the WalterPicks app. I'm running our program with 32 TikTok content creators. Hopefully 2 of them are going to join this live stream tonight. But one of the conundrums I run into now, I'm also playing in a lot of fantasy leagues, high-stakes fantasy leagues. And I had Tyson Williams in, I think, 4 of my 6 high-stakes fantasy leagues because I'm always the first to the waiver wire. Like, if you're playing in a league with me, good luck beating me on the waiver wire. And I had Tyson Williams, and I started Tyson Williams in a few leagues. And I was trying desperately to trade Tyson Williams all week. And I think you should too. In your league, go try to trade him right now because the Tyson Williams probably just had his best fantasy day of the season. And there's just no way we can confidently predict the Ravens backfield literally the whole rest of the season. It's going to be impossible to predict. They have never been a workhorse backfield ever. Over the last 3 years, not a single running back has eclipsed a 70% rush share in a single game. It's insane. Maybe one game. I might have misspoke. There might have been one game. It doesn't happen. The Ravens are going, and they just went out and signed 3 veterans: Devonta Freeman, Le'Veon Bell, Latavius Murray was already splitting carries with Tyson Williams. So bench Tyson Williams this week and try to trade him. Put him into your starting lineup and try to trade him, but make sure he's out of your starting lineup by the start of the week. I would definitely not start Tyson Williams. I would start Myles Gaskin over Tyson Williams. Definitely. Deontay Johnson or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Oh, God. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is such an interesting player right now because he had a really disappointing rookie season, obviously, last year. He was a first-round pick in most fantasy drafts last year. Completely disappointed. And then he has a pretty disappointing week 1, too. Let me pull up Clyde Edwards-Helaire stats, but going back and watching that game, it's just like he doesn't he's not passing the eye test either. He really looks like he might just be an average running back in the NFL. All that being said, I would still start Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Deontay Johnson in that situation, because Clyde is going to have much, much better days. The Chiefs aren't going to be in that many close games this season. Understand, the Browns are a playoff team. The Browns are arguably a top 5 team in the NFL, and the Chiefs are going to have games that aren't that close, though they're up against the Ravens in week 2. So maybe I backtrack there and I do say Deontay Johnson. But long term, Clyde is going to be fine. I wouldn't trade away Clyde if you have him. I think I will switch that down. I think I'd go Deontay over Clyde given the matchups this week. Clyde's up against the Ravens defense that did look pretty good in week 1. All right. We are going to bench Saquon Barkley tonight. So if you're asking questions about Saquon Barkley, and of course it matters who, like I'm seeing Saquon Barkley or Marvin Jones, and this is just brutal right now for Saquon Barkley drafters. Like if you drafted Saquon Barkley, you were not hoping that week 2, your decision was going to come down to Marvin Jones or Saquon Barkley. Like that was not your plan A. But I don't think you're that crazy for thinking to start Marvin Jones over Saquon Barkley. I would bench Saquon Barkley in week 2 with a good enough option. And Marvin Jones, honestly, is a good enough option because Saquon Barkley's in such a tough spot tonight unless he does really well as a receiver and he only had 3 targets in the first game, just 3. Then he's probably gonna flop tonight because the Washington football defense is good, the defensive line is good, and the Giants offensive line is trash. So I don't want to start Saquon tonight, and it doesn't feel good. Saquon Barkley doesn't feel good to say this, by the way, and I'm sure it doesn't feel good to actually put him on your bench in fantasy. I didn't draft him anywhere, but I do want to I want him to turn it around. I want them to unleash Saquon. Saquon's the most athletic running back in the NFL. But it's just tough right now to start Saquon Barkley. Gesicki or Goddard, that's a good one. I'd probably go Goddard. Gesicki is a guy that honestly is close to droppable right now in fantasy football. You can't start Mike Gesicki in week 2. Mike Gesicki was out. I don't think he even ran the most routes among tight ends on his own team. There was like 4 different tight ends, maybe 3 different tight ends involved in the Dolphins attack on offense in week 1. And then you add in the fact that Will Fuller is coming back. I don't think you can confidently project any one of the Dolphins players this week. I'm not that confident in Jalen Waddle. I'm not that confident in Devontae Parker. I'm not that confident in Will Fuller, but at least one of those guys will do well. And then you have Mike Gesicki also splitting time with 2 other tight ends. And then Myles Gaskin actually lost some work to Malcolm Brown and Ahmed in week 1 as well. I'm not that Gaskin to me is also a guy that I'd be fine trading away right now because he actually ended up having a decent week 1. But you look at the Dolphins snaps and you go back and watch that game. Ahmed had a pretty big receiving role in the game. He played a bunch of third downs, and Malcolm Brown is still going to be very involved in the red zone for the Dolphins. So you're taking away some of Gaskin's receiving role, and then you're taking away some of his touchdown upside. It's like, all right, now what's the point of us having Myles Gaskin on our fantasy teams if he doesn't have the receiving ceiling or the touchdown ceiling? Now he's really like a running back 2/3 rather than a running back 1/2 that he was last year. Najee Harris or Ingram. Oh my God. We're getting Najee Harris versus Mark Ingram questions. It's only week 2, guys. It's only week 2. You got to start Najee Harris. We have to start Najee Harris. All right. I'm getting an interesting question here that I want to address in the chat. Gabriel Perez, man, thanks for tuning in, by the way. If you're tuned in right now, thank you so much. I have a lot of fun doing this. We are live on TikTok and YouTube right now. Hit the like and subscribe button or the like and follow button wherever you're at. I do appreciate it. It takes you like 2 seconds. But I want to get to this question because I think it's a good one. And the question here is, I'm sorry, I got rid of the question. But Perez, I will get to your question. I'm showing my top 10 quarterbacks right now on the bottom of the screen. But the question is, Lamar or Herbert this week? And guys, I do not want to bench Justin Herbert this week. I really don't. I really, really do not want to bench Justin Herbert this week. Herbert is a guy that I'm probably going to be playing in my DraftKings league this week. By the way, I had the second most points in my head-to-head DraftKings league week 1. Absolutely love to see it. We locked in Christian McCaffrey, obviously, but we also locked in the Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith stack, which absolutely smashed on DraftKings in week 1. So you love to see that. But I think week 2 on DraftKings, I'm going with Justin Herbert because Justin Herbert has such an amazing matchup against the Cowboys. But on top of that, I feel so good about what the Chargers did against this Washington defense. And I'll be able to confirm that tonight based on how the defense looks tonight against a much worse offense in the Giants. And if the Washington defense looks good tonight, then like you have to start Justin Herbert against a much, much worse defense in the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, Herbert did well in week 1 and against a potentially top 5, top 10 defense. So I would say Justin Herbert, but then you're asking about Lamar Jackson here. And Lamar Jackson is a guy that, like, there's 4 guys that I'll say all season long you probably should never bench: Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson. And I know Josh Allen didn't have a great week 1. Don't bench Josh Allen. Just play Josh Allen. And Justin Herbert's my number 7 quarterback heading into this week, but I could easily see him being number 5 by the time we get to 1 o'clock Sunday, especially if Washington defense looks good tonight. So I want to start both, honestly, but I would probably lean towards Lamar Jackson over Justin Herbert because Lamar Jackson is the greatest rushing quarterback of all time, and he just has such a safe floor. But I wouldn't knock anyone for starting Justin Herbert this week over Lamar, or honestly over any of those 4. Hey, Sam, love the content. Thanks, man. Do I trade Diggs and Damian Harris? For Aaron Jones and Marvin Jones? Oh, you're getting the 2 Jones. No, I wouldn't. You're getting the best running back in the trade, which I like. I think Aaron Jones, by the way, we talk about the Packers for a second. The Packers are going to be fine. I would be pretty surprised if the Packers were that bad all season. And it's probably going to change as soon as this week in the perfect get-well matchup against the Detroit Lions. So I like Aaron Jones rest of season a lot. I would go trade for him. I'm also still very high on Stephon Diggs. And I think Stephon Diggs is also going to be fine. He had a pretty bad week 1. I like Stephon Diggs in week 2 a lot as well. I think he's a top 3 wide receiver for me heading into week 2 still. So I think it's a fair trade, but I actually like the Diggs and Damian Harris side a little bit more. I still think Damian Harris is going to be fine. Talk about Shepard. Yeah, Sterling Shepard. All right, we got to talk about Sterling Shepard because Sterling Shepard had a really good week 1. And again, I talked about him a little earlier that I was happy for him week 1 because I have him on over 20% of my best ball teams. He was going like round like 12, 13 in best ball. It made no sense all offseason. Like this guy was going to be the 1 or 2 for the Giants, and that's exactly what he was in week 1. He saw 7 catches, he turned 9 targets into 7 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown. He is also kind of the shorter route receiver on this team. If you go back and watch the game, I go back and watch every single game at least once, and I was really interested to see what Shepard's role looked like in week 1. And when you go back and watch the game, he really is the guy that he's not running the deep routes in this offense. That's Kenny Golladay and Darius Slayton's job. What Sterling Shepard's doing is running the intermediate and short routes, but he's doing very well after the catch. And if there's one guy that is going to work well, like if there's one type of play style that will work well tonight, it's that play style. It's the short and intermediate routes because the Washington football front 7 is going to destroy the Giants' offensive line. And so it might only be Sterling Shepard tonight for the Giants. I would feel pretty good about starting Sterling Shepard this week. He put up 24 fantasy points in week 1. I wouldn't expect that from him every week. I think 10 fantasy points is a better projection for him. He's probably going to score between 10 and 15 tonight. That's where I would put him. So if you're feeling good about 10 to 15 fantasy points, then yeah, go with Sterling Shepard. He also 9 targets is pretty good. 9 targets is definitely a solid wide receiver 2 number for your fantasy team. So yeah, I don't dislike Sterling Shepard tonight. If there's one Giant I like the most tonight, it's probably Sterling Shepard, honestly. Start Julio Jones or Sterling Shepard. Oh, God. This is the fun part of Thursday night where you have to decide between Sterling Shepard. You have to decide between Saquon Barkley and Kenny Golladay. And then between them and like some other guys that did horrible in week 1, like Julio Jones. And Julio Jones, I'm honestly just a little nervous. I'm not that nervous. I think Julio Jones is going to be fine. But like I mentioned earlier in the stream, I am a little nervous just about the Titans offense overall. I'm pretty nervous that offense is going to take a big step back. I think losing their offensive coordinator was a bigger deal than I realized heading into the season. They ran, I said it earlier, they were bottom 3 in the NFL in play action percentage. In the percentage of plays they ran play action, bottom 3 in the NFL in week 1. They were top 3 in the NFL in that stat last season. And it was a big part of their success. Why did they get away from that? I don't fully understand. But the fact that Julio Jones did so bad against the Cardinals, the Cardinals guys, they are not a talented secondary. They lost their starting corner weeks before the season in Malcolm Butler. And Julio Jones did see 6 targets still. He like 17.1% target share. It's not terrible. But he turned that into 3 catches, 29 yards, 0 touchdowns. for Julio Jones. And then I went back and, like I said, that was one of the games I rewatched twice. I was very interested in that Titans offense and why it failed so epically in week 1 against really not that good of a defense, a secondary. Their front seven honestly surprised me, the Cardinals. Chandler Jones, by the way, another reason to be concerned about the Titans. Chandler Jones was up against the highest paid left tackle in football. I'm pretty sure he's the highest paid left tackle in football. Someone correct me on that if I'm wrong. I could be slightly off on that. He's definitely top 3. I think Tyler Lewan is his name, if I'm saying that right. But Chandler Jones just dominated him. And that's also really concerning for the Titans. Like if their top paid guy is going to struggle that bad against the best defenders, like they're going to really struggle. But Julio Jones also lacks separation in week 1. He really was not creating any separation. If you look at playerprofiler.com, by the way, they have target separation there. He ranked 74th in week 1 in terms of target separation. And that, like, what isn't surprising, because I went back and watched the game, almost every single target Julio Jones got, he was literally, like, directly covered. Like, there was literally a guy directly on him. So if he can't create separation, I mean, that is a concern for, a 32 going on 33-year-old Julio Jones. So I wouldn't knock you for going Sterling Shepard over Julio Jones. That was a very long-winded answer for you. I would be fine going Sterling Shepard over Julio Jones. But again, I'm not going to feel good about that because Julio Jones absolutely still has a higher ceiling than Sterling Shepard. Though I would argue Sterling Shepard's floor is like much higher than Julio Jones' floor right now. Do I trade Swift for Gibson? Yes. Yes, you should. Guys, Antonio Gibson, you're going to see it tonight. And we saw it last week. Antonio Gibson is the staple of this Washington offense right now. And I know I got Terry McLaurin behind me. I think Terry McLaurin is going to bounce back tonight too. I think he's going to have a good game. I think that he's going to be just fine without Ryan Fitzpatrick. Terry McLaurin, really all he's ever done is ball out on football fields. He's averaging still 70 yards a game throughout his career. I think he's going to be fine. And don't forget, Terry McLaurin has played with bad quarterbacks his whole career. This is nothing new for Terry McLaurin. He's never really played with a good quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick was going to be the best quarterback he ever played with. And so I'm not that worried about it. I'm really not. But Antonio Gibson is also, are you ever going to bet unders for props, Spencer? Antonio Gibson, though, definitely go trade for him if you're only giving up DeAndre Swift. Spencer, this is a good question in the YouTube Live. Guys, we're live on TikTok and YouTube right now. And on YouTube, if you come to the YouTube Live, link is in the TikTok bio. You can see my top 10 quarterbacks, top 10 receivers, top 10 tight ends, top 10 running backs for this week. But I can't show that on TikTok. It doesn't have that feature. But I do think that betting unders is not something I enjoy doing. I think life is too short for betting unders. I didn't come up with that, by the way. I don't know who did. But life is too short for betting unders. That being said, we of course will. There will be a time we bet on unders. We actually have in the WalterPicks app. We have in the history of the WalterPicks app, which I think we were over like 300 props identified at this point by Walter, our artificially intelligent algorithm that you can get access to in the WalterPicks app on the iOS App Store. Completely free to download. You get a completely free 7-day trial to try it out. Like, just see if it's something you want to pay for, then you pay. I don't know why every service doesn't work that way. But the in the WalterPicks app, we've had one under before, and it was actually week 1 of last season. It was Le'Veon Bell. It was his under last season, week 1. You can see, by the way, in the app, you can go back and see the historical props. And Le'Veon Bell under week 1 last season was just like such a massive lock that we had to put it in there. And that's when we'll do unders. We will almost only do unders if we feel like there's just no way the under doesn't hit. So if Walter has extreme confidence about unders, then yeah, we will bet some unders this season. But until then, like, I'm not going to force unders because it's not fun. And part of the reason that betting is fun, like, that's part of the reason you bet, hopefully, is that it's fun. And so I don't want to bet on unders, really. All right. Should I play the Giants defense tonight? Is this what I'm saying? No. Definitely don't play the Giants defense tonight. It's not terrible. It's really not, because they are playing a backup quarterback. But I still think you shouldn't be playing the Giants. The Giants defense isn't good. So I wouldn't play the Giants defense. I would probably go, honestly, with the Browns over the Giants. I know the Browns defense didn't do great in fantasy last week, but they were also against the best offense in the NFL. And they get, guys, the Browns, by the way, the Browns are a massive lock in week 2. There's almost zero chance that the Browns lose in week 2. I don't know what the spread is. I can pull it up. I have it actually right here. But the Browns, if there's one team that's not losing in week 2, it is the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns coming off a really close game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And now they're 13-point favorites over the Texans. I would literally take them against the spread. That's how confident I am that the Browns are going to win. By the way, on our Sunday morning live stream, I'm live every Sunday morning from about when I wake up to pretty much kickoff on Sundays. And I'll give my picks against the spread for every game. I'll probably end up taking the Browns in that game because the Browns are going to obliterate the Houston Texans. Because this is the thing. Week 2, honestly, might be my favorite week of the season because you still have so many questions about teams, and so many of your opinions about teams actually depend on your opinion on the team they played. Like, for example, the Houston Texans. I still think the Houston Texans are awful. Honestly not sure they'll win another game this season because that's how bad the Jacksonville Jaguars are. That's how bad the Jaguars are. So, yeah, the Jaguars are just so bad on defense. Fields or Lance, the better player to roster. This is a tough one for me because if we knew both guys were going to start next week, I would say Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is just in a much better offense with a much better coach and is just as dynamic of a player as Justin Fields. But I love Justin Fields. And even though he's in a worse situation, I think he's the guy that he almost has to start sooner than Trey Lance. Jimmy Garoppolo is good. Andy Dalton is not good. Maybe you could argue Jimmy Garoppolo is just okay, but he's definitely not bad. Andy Dalton, what are the Bears really doing? Are they just throwing the season away? Because that's really the message they're sending to everyone right now by starting Andy Dalton over Justin Fields. I understand, by the way, Bears players being upset that Andy Dalton's getting booed, but also, I understand the booing. Justin Fields is already better than Andy Dalton, and he really should be starting. So he's probably going to start sooner than Trey Lance. That's why I would say it's better to roster Justin Fields right now than Trey Lance. Hey, Sam, what do we do about Zach Moss? I know, man. Zach Moss and Trey Sermon, 2 very surprise healthy scratches from week 1. I think Zach Moss can be dropped in fantasy. I honestly, if he's a healthy scratch, he's behind Matt Breida. But not only is Zach Moss was he a healthy scratch week 1, he was also in an offense that's just not that good for running backs for fantasy football. They're a really good offense because they throw so much. And by the way, Josh Allen was, I think, number 3 in the NFL in thrown air yards in week 1. I'm not worried about Josh Allen at all. The offense clearly still going to be throwing the ball a ton this season. So I'm not that worried about Josh Allen. All right. I got to talk about Trey Sermon, though. I would not drop Trey Sermon. And if anyone dropped Trey Sermon in your fantasy leagues, I would go add Trey Sermon. Because with the Raheem Mostert injury, he's done for the year. Trey Sermon done for the year. Raheem Mostert done for the year. Trey Sermon, they traded up for Trey Sermon in this draft, and then they make him a healthy scratch and start Elijah Mitchell over him, who they drafted in the same draft, but later in the draft. And Elijah Mitchell looked good. By the way, I understand blowing a lot of your fab on Elijah Mitchell. I think you should start Elijah Mitchell this week. But I would also speculatively add Trey Sermon, because if there's one thing that's actually pretty clear about this 49ers backfield is that it could be a pretty consistent rotation. And it might be hard to predict which guy it's going to be each week. So similar to the Ravens backfield, the 49ers backfield is going to be really hard to predict each week. For that reason, I would go get Trey Sermon because he could easily end up leading this backfield in carries in some weeks this season. All right. Should I start Mike Williams, Sterling Shepard, Antonio Brown, or T. Higgins? Gave 5 stars. Thanks for the 5-star review, man. I do appreciate that. The 5-star reviews in the iOS App Store for the WalterPicks app, one of the best ways you can help me out without really spending any money is just tossing us a 5-star review in the App Store. Helps out a ton. It takes you like a minute. So I do appreciate that. I want WalterPicks to break the top 25 apps this season, and we really only could do that with 5-star reviews. So thank you for that. I would probably start Antonio Brown, though, out of those guys. Antonio Brown, I don't know how you could bench him after what he did in week 1. I mean, Antonio Brown led the Bucs in air yards again, and he really has a chance to lead the Bucs in receiving this season. And it's just so clear, too, that how the connection between Antonio Brown and Tom Brady is just insane. So I wouldn't hate that. I don't hate that at all. I don't hate that at one bit. I would go Antonio Brown. Though all those options are pretty good. And honestly, Mike Williams is the only Chargers player I'm a little nervous about for this week. And I'm not sure if it's nervous enough to say he's a definite bench because Mike Williams had a great week 1. And Mike Williams is poised to have a really big season this year. By the way, he's in a contract year. So he's doing well this season for a lot of different reasons. But when you look at the Chargers, and they're up against the Cowboys. The Cowboys' defense looked horrible against the Buccaneers. And they're without a few of their best defensive linemen heading into week 2 that they had in week 1. But all that being said, the Cowboys, the one player that they stopped in week 1 was Mike Evans. And Mike Evans has a very similar role to Mike Williams. So if there's one player they're going to stop successfully in week 2, it's probably Mike Williams. So I actually am a little nervous about Mike Williams. He does play a super similar role to Mike Evans. And by the way, I'm not panicking about Mike Evans either. You can confidently start Mike Evans. I think he's a top 20 receiver in the WalterPicks app heading into week 2. Start Antonio Brown or Deontay Johnson. That's a tough one. I would argue Deontay Johnson's floor is really high. He's been the number 1 receiver for the Steelers for really over a year now. He's had over a 20% target share in almost every single game. He led in target share again this past week. And so he has a pretty good floor, but the ceiling for Antonio Brown is definitely higher than Deontay Johnson. The ceiling for Deontay Johnson is just not that high because Big Ben is really he's just at the end of his career. He's not the Big Ben he once was. And there's a chance that he's just lowering the ceiling for that whole offense, as is the offensive line, by the way. But I'm not panicking about the only guy I'm not panicking about on the Steelers is Najee Harris. I think you should be pretty nervous about every other guy, but Deontay Johnson has a pretty safe floor every single week. All right, Cardinals D or Steelers defense. So the Cardinals defense did really well in week 1. I don't feel great about their secondary. So I honestly would probably go with the Steelers against the Bengals. The Cardinals have a pretty good week 2 matchup as well. I know that they do, but I don't love their defense's secondary. And so week 2, the Cardinals are up against the Jaguars. Honestly, I changed my mind. Played the Cardinals defense. The Jaguars are so bad. I didn't realize that's who they were playing. Are they playing? I thought that no, they're playing the Vikings. I'm sorry. I was looking at week 3. Yeah. I changed my mind again. I would go with the Steelers, not the Cardinals. All right. Carson or for Jacobs and Hollywood Brown? No, don't go trade for Josh Jacobs. Go trade away Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is a guy that I honestly don't want to start in week 2. Josh Jacobs got lucky with 2 touchdowns in week 1, but he actually picked up an injury, and he split work with Kenyon Drake. Nobody's talking about this. I haven't seen this anywhere, and I meant to post a video about this earlier. I probably will before week 2. But Josh Jacobs, he really, you got to be really concerned about him right now in fantasy football. He had 10 carries, 2 targets. 10 carries, 2 targets, and 2 touchdowns. That efficiency is not happening for Josh Jacobs this season. He's not going to score 2 touchdowns every 10 carries. He really did not get the volume you were hoping for. He had a 52% opportunity share. Kenyon Drake took 50% of the opportunities in that backfield. And the Raiders' offensive line isn't that good. So why are we in on Josh? Don't be in on Josh Jacobs. I would trade him away if you have him right now off the 2 touchdown performance. Honestly, this might be the best time all season to go trade away Josh Jacobs. Kenyon Drake actually looked fine too, by the way. He looked okay. He didn't look that bad. And Josh Jacobs did pick up a small injury. And this is exactly why they went out and paid Kenyon Drake, because Josh Jacobs has picked up little injuries over the course of his career. Hey, Sam, just gave you a 5-star review in the App Store. Thanks so much, man. I do appreciate that. Do I trade Joe Mixon for Robbie Anderson and DeAndre Swift? Also thoughts on Damian Harris. No, I wouldn't do that trade. I would not give up Joe Mixon for Robbie Anderson and DeAndre Swift, because Robbie Anderson's another guy that I'm much more nervous about now than I was before the season. Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall has a role already in that offense. It wouldn't shock me if Terrace Marshall gets more targets in the back half of the season than Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson had 3 targets in week 1. Don't go buying 3 targets. You don't want a guy that's only getting 3 targets on your team. Robbie Anderson's good. I posted a video about Robbie Anderson before the season started. I like Robbie Anderson as the player. But fantasy football is not just about talent. Robbie Anderson has all the talent. It's not just about the talent, though. It's about the volume. Volume is king in fantasy football. And in fantasy football, 3 targets is just not enough. So I would actually be selling Robbie Anderson too. Josh Jacobs and Robbie Anderson, 2 sells for me right now. All right, we got some good questions in the TikTok chat right now. I do want to try to get to as many of the questions that are about tonight as I can. A.J. Brown for David Montgomery have bad running backs but good receivers. Alex, no. Even if you have good receivers and bad running backs, don't let that be a reason you sell low. Don't let the people in your league talk you into a worse trade just because you have good players in one position. Don't sell low, guys. Do not sell low. A.J. Brown for David Montgomery, just when you say that out loud, you just know that's a trade you should not do. So, no, you can get something better than David Montgomery for A.J. Brown. Okay. Let's get to some of the questions here. We have talked a little bit about Saquon Barkley, but I still see a lot of comments about him, so we're going to address this again. Do not start Saquon Barkley this week. Do not start Saquon Barkley this week. And this is coming from the guy, by the way, who told you to start in week 1. So I've already missed once. I've already swung and completely missed the ball once on Saquon Barkley, the most athletic running back in the NFL, by the way. And I don't feel good about telling you to bench Saquon Barkley, but you go back and watch that Giants game from week 1. He gets 10 carries, 3 targets, 13 total opportunities for Saquon Barkley in week 1, by far the lowest of his career in any healthy game that he's ever played. He's averaging, by the way, in other games before with this past week, he's averaging over 22 opportunities a game. He had 13. That's 9 less than he usually has. And then you go back and watch the game, you see how bad the offensive line was for the Giants. It's exactly why I have very little confidence in them tonight against a good Washington football defense. Then you get all the reasons why you should be benching Saquon Barkley tonight. So yeah, I would bench Saquon Barkley in week 2. I'm going to be very clear about this one. I don't like it. And you're not going to like benching Saquon Barkley, but if you have a decent option, then you probably should. Guys, if you're watching live on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching live on TikTok, hit the like. They added a like button to TikTok. It's actually great. I actually really do like it. So hit the like button. But also, if you're not following us yet on TikTok, what are you waiting for, man? Hit the follow button if you're watching us on TikTok as well. Is Julio Jones a start this week? Now, I don't think he is a must start this week after what he did last week, but I do think he's going to turn it around. I am a little nervous, though, overall about the Titans' offense. It's less about Julio Jones, who, by the way, he did get 0 separation in the game this past week, which is concerning. But I still think he's going to turn it around. He also didn't practice like all preseason, so maybe he's just getting his legs under him. But he's also going on 33 years old. So that's a small concern. But the much bigger concern for Julio Jones and for A.J. Brown and for Derrick Henry and for Ryan Tannehill is the Titans' offensive line and the Titans' offense in general. I said this earlier, and I'll say it again. I think this is actually a really big deal. The Titans were bottom 3 in the NFL in play-action snap percentage in week 1. They were top 3 in that stat last season. And I like looking at this stat because it really does show you how the coaches influence things. And play action is by far one of the most efficient things you can do on offense in the NFL. There's so many studies that show this now. And it was a big part of the Titans' success last season. And it makes so much sense for how the Titans are built. Obviously, faking the ball to Derrick Henry before throwing to A.J. Brown and Julio Jones is just a great strategy. And they're getting away from that, which is concerning. But also, Chandler Jones went to town on the Titans' highest paid offensive lineman. So that's also concerning. So I have a lot of concerns about the Titans right now. The Cardinals' secondary really isn't that good. So all those things are concerning. All right, getting back to some of the questions in the YouTube and TikTok chats. Robert Woods or Tyler Lockett rest of season PPR? I mean, how could you not say Tyler Lockett after that week 1 game? Man, I love watching Tyler Lockett ball out. Tyler Lockett is an absolute baller, man. And people forgot heading into the season, like a lot of people forget the context of the previous season. And it's one of the biggest edges to get heading into any new season. And the context for Tyler Lockett last season, the first half of the season last year, Tyler Lockett was a top 10 fantasy football wide receiver. The second half of the season, he was outside the top 30 wide receivers. And he was actually extremely inconsistent. If you can remember, he had a 40-point game and then a 0-point game within a 3-week span. But he actually was dealing with injuries at that time. And he's fully healthy now. So it's no surprise that he's balling out like he always has when healthy. He only saw 5 targets, though, guys, in week 1. He only saw 5 targets. He turned his 5 targets into 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett, since he's entered the league, is just this insane, hyper-efficient guy that he doesn't need 10 targets to get 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. There's very few players in the NFL that will ever turn 5 targets, 5 targets into 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. There's very few guys across the league that will do that all season. And that's what Tyler Lockett can do. And then you get into games where the Seahawks are throwing the ball even more. And then you get games where Tyler Lockett's 10 targets and just look out for the 30-plus, 40-plus point games. That's the ceiling for Lockett. So I would probably go Lockett across the whole season over Robert Woods, but it's close. I think Robert Woods is going to have a much better fantasy day ahead of him than he did in week 1, too. And yeah, he didn't have a terrible week 1, but it was nothing to write home about either. Should I trade for Saquon? This is an interesting one. This is obviously much different than should I start Saquon Barkley tonight, Because no, I wouldn't start Saquon Barkley tonight after what we saw in week 1, and he only saw 13 opportunities, 10 carries, 3 targets. So I wouldn't start him, but should you trade for him? This is where things get interesting for me, because if you've been following me for a while, you know there's really only one thing that I really care about, and it's like I shouldn't say one thing I really care about. Like, there's one goal I have in fantasy football. That's a way better way to state it. There's a lot of things I care about, obviously, but there's one thing I care about in my fantasy football leagues, and that's winning the fantasy football championship. That's the goal. That is the only goal for your fantasy football team. And I do think I think trading for Saquon Barkley aligns with that goal actually pretty well. I mean, if you're trying to win your fantasy league, and I said this all offseason too about Saquon, the injury is not the concern. He's going to be at full strength. He's going to get his full workload at some point this season. It could be as soon as tonight. I don't think it will be tonight. That's why I'm telling you to bench Saquon, but it could be. It could also be 2 weeks from now, or 3 weeks from now, or 4 weeks from now, but it absolutely will come. And when it does come, we are going to see Saquon Barkley put up good fantasy numbers, even on a bad offense, though the offense is really concerning too, and the offensive line is concerning. But Saquon Barkley has succeeded in bad offenses before. As a rookie, you look at his first games, 20 fantasy points, 25 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points, 30 fantasy, like every single game over 20 fantasy points on a bad offense, because like Christian McCaffrey, he gets so many targets and carries that it doesn't even matter how bad his team is. So I don't hate trading for Saquon. I guess that's my short answer. I don't hate trading for Saquon. Of course, it matters what you're giving up. It matters how good your team is right now too. Like I definitely wouldn't trade for Saquon Barkley if I already lost week 1. If you're undefeated though after week 2 or even after week 1 and you want to be aggressive, then trading for Saquon Barkley really could be a championship winning move. I would not be surprised if Saquon Barkley wins fantasy football championships this season. Kelly Bent in the YouTube chat. Hey, Sam, champion gold subscriber. Kelly, seriously, thank you so much for subscribing. The number one way that you can help me, Kelly, is by going into the WalterPicks app and subscribing. Seriously, like, Kelly, you are helping me like live out this dream. So thank you so much. All right, got to get to this question though. Montgomery or Taylor this week? I'm assuming that's a Jonathan Taylor question. And at first glance with Jonathan Taylor in week 1, and I went back and I watched that Colts game. I go back and rewatch every game at least once. Jonathan Taylor, he stood out to me for a few reasons. One, put up a great fantasy day, 17.6 fantasy points. He also had 6 red zone touches, which was 3rd most in the league. But above all, what got me excited about Jonathan Taylor was the targets. He had 7 targets in week 1. And Nyheim Hines got a ton of targets too. Carson Wentz, I think he was 1st in the league. Maybe he was 2nd in the league in terms of the percentage of his passes that went to running backs. He was top 2 in the league in that stat. And people were nervous heading into the season, like going from Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz. Phillip Rivers has always targeted his running backs. So how big of a jump is that going to be from Carson Wentz? Well, Carson Wentz he left right off from where Phillip Rivers was. And that's great news for Jonathan Taylor. If you go back and you watch my do not draft list, I'm pretty sure Jonathan Taylor was on there. But the reason that I cited for Jonathan Taylor being on my do not draft list was I was worried he was not going to get any catches. But I was wrong about that. And I was wrong about Jonathan Taylor. He shouldn't have been on that list. He saw 7 targets. In week 1, that was the 5th most in the NFL at the running back position. He had 60 receiving yards, the 3rd most in the league. He's a good receiver too, so it's good that they're targeting him. And this is why Carson Wentz keeps throwing to the running backs, because both those backs, Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, are very efficient receivers out of the backfield. So I would probably go Jonathan Taylor over David Montgomery. That's probably my short answer, though I am nervous about the Colts in general. And I don't love – I also – like, David Montgomery is a guy that I was fading also this season, and he looked good. And I think he is good. I've always thought he's good. The big concern for me about David Montgomery heading into the season wasn't that he's not good. The big concern for me heading into the season for David Montgomery, who, by the way, he put up 19 fantasy points in week 1 too. Good week 1. 8th most fantasy points among running backs in week 1. But his opportunity share was concerning. I'm pulling this up now. I want to take a quick look at the number. The opportunity share for David Montgomery was 60%. 60%. He had a 90% opportunity share last year. Opportunity share is just the percentage of backfield touches that you're getting, or opportunities that you're getting. So targets and carries. And guys, this is why I was fading David Montgomery. You look at his last season, and Tariq Cohen went down last season, and that was big because it led to David Montgomery getting a Christian McCaffrey type workload. He had a 90%. He got 90% of the opportunities in the backfield last season. that led the NFL, number one in the NFL. And then you see week one, he gets down to 60%, which isn't surprising. We knew Damian Williams would be involved. Damian Williams actually looked pretty good. So I do think that I would go trade David Montgomery away. I'm not feeling great about David Montgomery. I really am. I'm not. 60% opportunity share is not what you wanted from David Montgomery in week one if you had him, though he did put up 19 fantasy points and he did score a touchdown. So it's not a terrible time to go trade him. By the way, we're live on YouTube and TikTok right now, and you can see, I got to change this up. I'm sorry. I keep getting sidetracked here, but you can see my top 10 running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks coming right across the screen on the bottom on YouTube. The link is in our TikTok bio. You're like 3 presses away on your phone. If you're on TikTok to come to the YouTube live, you can see my top 10 rankings, which could also hopefully help answer some of the questions you have in the chat. But we got a question here that I want to get to. I think this is a good question. And first of all, thank you for subscribing on YouTube and TikTok. Quinn, thank you so much, man. I do appreciate it. Love the content. Thanks. Should I start Saquon or Mitchell? Should I start Saquon or Elijah Mitchell? It took me a second there to figure out who Mitchell was because going into the season, Elijah Mitchell was on nobody's radar for season-long fantasy at least. But I'd go Elijah Mitchell. Thank God, man. Here we are, Quinn. It's week 2, and we're going to bench Saquon Barkley, our first or second round draft pick, probably your first round draft pick, for Elijah Mitchell, a guy that was rostered on 0 teams heading into week 1. I mean, fantasy football comes at you fast, man. But I would start Elijah Mitchell over Saquon Barkley. And this is one of these clips that is going to probably age terribly, Quinn. And I don't feel good about benching Saquon, and you shouldn't feel good about benching Saquon, the most athletic running back in the league, a guy that we've seen ball out on bad offenses before. But he also only saw 13 opportunities in week 1. 10 carries, 3 targets is not going to be enough for Saquon to succeed in fantasy football. So I'd go Elijah Mitchell until we see Barkley. Barkley should have been a round 2 stash to wait and see. Yeah, I agree. I didn't take Saquon Barkley in a single league because he didn't fall to the second round in any of my drafts. I was actually a little surprised by that, by the way. I thought I was going to get Saquon Barkley in round 2. I did get Saquon Barkley in round 2 in a few best ball drafts because I did so many best ball drafts. I did over 450 of them. But I think that Saquon Barkley in round 2 made sense. Like it was a wait and see thing. And we didn't know when he's going to get his full workload. Though I was pretty confident all season he was going to play week 1, and he did end up playing week 1. But I would bench Saquon Barkley in week 2. All right. Getting back to some of the comments. All right, someone's in an emergency, says Christian. Start Sutton, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, or Darnell Mooney wide. I mean, this is an easy one, Christian. You're not in an emergency. Just go start Cortland Sutton. Don't start Darnell Mooney or Marquez Valdez. I mean, Cortland Sutton's the clear wide receiver 1 for his team now. Jerry Jeudy's out, and the Broncos have an amazing week 2 matchup against the Jaguars. So you have to go start. I actually wanted to I want to look this up really quickly. So the Jaguars, I think the Jaguars defense, by the way, they're not going to stop a single team this season. They gave up 37 points to the Houston Texans. It's just insane. I cannot believe they let up 37 points to Tyrod Taylor in the Houston. I mean, just asinine for the Jaguars defense. The Broncos are going to put up points against them this week. Teddy Bridgewater, a great quarterback streamer, great on DraftKings and FanDuel this week. He's also going to put up 200+ yards, 2+ touchdowns against this Jaguars defense. He's better than Tyrod Taylor is. And Cortland Sutton's a guy you got to like for that reason too. The Cardinals are going to destroy the Jaguars in week 3. Honestly, I wanted to look at who the Jaguars are playing in the fantasy playoffs. And you take a quick look, and they play the Texans again in the fantasy playoffs. That's not what I wanted to see. The Jets and the Titans. The Titans are probably – Derrick Henry, for whatever reason, I feel like Derrick Henry always gets the most amazing playoff schedule for fantasy football. It's just crazy. Last year, it was nuts how good of a schedule Derrick Henry had at the end of the season. All right, this is a good question. Mike Williams or Elijah Mitchell? Mike Williams is one guy that I am slightly concerned about for the Chargers this week. I'm not that concerned about anyone on the offense for the Chargers against the Cowboys, who got toasted by the Bucs offense in week 1. But Mike Williams plays such a similar role to Mike Evans. And Mike Evans was the only guy that the Cowboys offense stopped in week 1. So that's my only reason for being a little concerned about Mike Williams. So I wouldn't hate going Elijah Mitchell. But Elijah Mitchell is not a lock, guys. Elijah Mitchell is not a lock. It's why I didn't blow that much of my fab on him in any leagues. I think the 49ers backfield is going to end up being somewhat similar to the Baltimore backfield, where it's just hard to predict every single week. And if that's the case, then I really do think Elijah Mitchell is going to be a waste if you spent that much on him in the waiver wire. All right, Sterling or T. Higgins? I'd go T. Higgins over Sterling Shepard. Start all versus Falcons. Yes. Start everyone against the Atlanta Falcons. There's a few defenses every year that are like this. And it's actually, though, usually it's not this early in the season that we know who those defenses are. This season feels a little different. We know the Atlanta Falcons defense is going to get destroyed by everyone they play against. We know that the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, above all other defenses, is going to get absolutely obliterated by almost every single offense in the NFL. They've just let up 37 points to Tyrod Taylor and the boys. So you got to love going against the Jaguars defense. The Texans defense also, I think, is going to be pretty bad this season. I think you got to target them as well. There's so many good. The Cowboys defense right now too. Already, the Cowboys defense is one to target. So there's a bunch. McLaurin, Woods, AB, pick 2. I would probably go with Woods and Antonio Brown. I think you almost have to go with Woods and Antonio Brown. But I really don't dislike Terry McLaurin this week. I think Terry McLaurin, I just had a picture up of him behind me before, but I think Terry McLaurin's going to have a fine season. I think he's going to be fine. But tonight, with his first game, Taylor Heineke, I would be fine starting Antonio Brown over him. And I would also be fine. I forget the other guy now, but I think I would probably bench Terry McLaurin over those guys. Okay. And we're going to have, by the way, Washington.WalterPicks and I think Giants.WalterPicks joining us on this live stream for briefly just I think sometime in the next 40 minutes, I think we're going to have each of them on just for like 5 to 10 minutes. And we're going to ask them some good questions about what they think is going to happen tonight. So I'm excited to hear, because it's important to get multiple opinions, of course. That's why I built a machine learning algorithm that gives us very accurate fantasy football projections, because I obviously have a lot of opinions about the NFL. So I got to make sure, I'm second guessing my own opinions, because you got to go get other opinions. So we're going to be talking to Washington.WalterPicks and Giants.WalterPicks tonight. And Giants.WalterPicks is a big Giants fan. Washington.WalterPicks is a big Washington fan. So I'm interested to see how rational their thoughts are on the game tonight too. Yeef saying, I will subscribe. Wow, Yeef, why haven't you hit the subscribe button yet, man? I do appreciate it. Should I trade Diggs for Godwin/Terry? Diggs for Godwin/Terry and Gaskin? No, don't trade Stephon Diggs. This is not the time to trade Stephon Diggs. Hold on to Stephon Diggs. You will thank me later. Stephon Diggs is going to be just fine, guys. Don't go trading Stephon Diggs. You're getting not even close to enough in return for Stephon Diggs if you're trading him right now. It almost doesn't matter what you're getting. You're selling him low, and you're probably not getting enough. Stephon Diggs is going to bounce back in a big way very soon, and I think it's going to happen in week 2. Stephon Diggs, he only had 69 nice receiving yards in week 1. Which is not good for Stephon Diggs. If you look back at his games last season, he went over that in almost every single game. It looks like 90% of his games he was going over 70 yards. He led the league in receiving yards last season. The good news for Stephon Diggs, though, is his air yards. And I talk about air yards all the time. I think that it's one of the most important stats. If there's just a few stats that you want to care about in fantasy football that aren't super mainstream yet, one of them is air yards. Air yards is just the number of yards that the ball travels in the air before reaching receivers. That's what air yards is. It's a better measure of volume than targets. It's more descriptive than targets, right? Because you could get 10 targets at the 0-yard line, or you get 10 targets 30 yards down the field. You want the targets 30 yards down the field in fantasy football, right? Those are more valuable. So that's what air yards helps with. And Stephon Diggs is the air yards king from last season, and he was 4th in air yards again in week 1. So he's going to be fine. He had 150 air yards, 150. 4th in the NFL in week 1. And he's going to be top 5 in that stat this season. It's a super important stat. That's the volume stat I look at for receivers. And you look back at 2020, and he was 4th in the NFL in air yards in 2020. He led the league in targets last season. And the most exciting part about Stephon Diggs in week 1, and really I think the only thing you could have possibly been concerned about for Stephon Diggs heading into the season is how is are the Bills going to pass as much as they did last season? Because they were top 3 in the league in pass rate last season, especially in neutral game scripts. And again, the Bills just clearly going to be super, super pass heavy this season. It's massive. Cole Beasley saw 13 targets in week 1. I mean, Diggs is going to ball out. Don't trade Diggs. If anything, go trade for Stephon Diggs. How is my team doing in the 32-person fantasy league? Well, I am the commissioner. I'm the commissioner of the 32-person fantasy league. I am not in the 32-person fantasy league. A very smart move, by the way, on my end. I'm glad I'm the commish and not in the league, because I get to maintain my I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, but I don't get to suffer the pain of coming in last in the 32-person fantasy league. That would be brutal for me. So I have zero chance at the last place because I'm not in the league, but I am watching it very closely. And week 1 was a very, very interesting week. At the beginning of the season, I think I predicted a few different teams to win. I actually like our Panthers.WalterPicks team a lot right now. I actually think that our Bills.WalterPicks creator is also a guy that to watch out for in that league. There's going to be a big separation between the best teams and worst teams. We'll ask our creators that come on to this live stream today too, how they're feeling about their selves in the 32-person fantasy league that we're doing amongst all of our WalterPicks content creators. Washington.WalterPicks, Avery, if you're in the chat, man, I'm ready for you to hop on. So you can try to join the stream or start your own stream on TikTok. We could probably best to join the YouTube first. So you can hop into the YouTube. It won't be brought up right away, don't worry. But once you're in, you can test out like your sound and stuff. Then you can go live on TikTok. We'll hop on live together, man, and get your thoughts on this Washington game. Start Kenny Golladay tonight over Darrell Henderson and Jalen Waddle. No, I would not start Kenny Golladay over Darrell Henderson. I would start him over Jalen Waddle. I would start Kenny Golladay over Jalen Waddle because Will Fuller's back. I don't feel great about Jalen Waddle in week 2. By the way, he looked good in week 1, and Jalen Waddle's going to be good. But Will Fuller coming back does impact things, and we just don't know exactly how much it's going to impact. So that's why I'm nervous about Jalen Waddle. But I'm not nervous about Darrell Henderson. I would start Darrell Henderson over Kenny Golladay for sure. All right. Ethan saying, I'll buy membership on your app if you're right. I love these types of bets, Ethan, because honestly, like the whole way that the WalterPicks app is set up too, like we give a 7-day free trial. So you use the WalterPicks app, you see if it works well for you. And if it does, then you subscribe. And if it doesn't, then fair enough. Like you don't need to subscribe. You got a 7-day free trial to test it out. All right. How do we think Josh Allen's going to do this week? And should I play Jalen Hurts over him? No, Ethan, start Josh Allen over Jalen Hurts. This is an easy one. Ethan, this is an easy WalterPicks subscription from you right now, Ethan. You got to start Josh Allen over Jalen Hurts. Josh Allen's going to be fine. Josh Allen's going to be fine. And sure, could he take a step back from last season? Yeah, he was in the MVP conversation last season. So it's not going to be like that surprising if he takes somewhat of a step back. But like we were just talking about, the Bills are still going to be top 3 in the league in terms of passing attempts and their aggressiveness in the passing game. And then they're up against the Dolphins defense. They get to go up against a Dolphins defense that got torched by Mac Jones in his first NFL start. I mean, you got to like Josh Allen this week. Don't bench Josh Allen. Nobody should bench Josh Allen. The only players I would bench Josh Allen for are Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, and maybe Lamar Jackson, maybe Justin Herbert. That's it. That's it. And if I pull up my QBs, Josh Allen's my second-ranked quarterback. Again, I'm on live on YouTube and TikTok right now, and you can see on the YouTube live, Josh Allen's my second-ranked quarterback this week. He's my second-ranked quarterback. So, Ethan, I look forward to the WalterPicks subscription, man. Honestly, though, it is the best way you could possibly help me, so thank you. Nathan's asking, thoughts on Justin Jefferson? Yeah, I mean, Justin Jefferson is going to be just fine as well. He didn't have the most amazing week 1. Honestly, the whole Vikings team really didn't have the best week 1. Losing to the Bengals was a pretty bad loss for them in week 1. But he still put up 12.5 fantasy points per game. He still ran 48 routes, which was actually number 1 in the NFL. He ran the most routes in the NFL in week 1. That's Justin Jefferson. He also had 2 deep targets, which was good. I think he's going to be fine. He actually had 108 air yards as well, which is also good. That's top 15 in the NFL. I think he's going to be fine. But 12.5 points, like this is Justin Jefferson's floor. He's on a run-first team, and especially in games where the Vikings get a big lead, which wasn't the case in this game, like he probably is going to have some down weeks. He might not be what you were expecting with your second-round pick. He was going a little too early for me, honestly, in fantasy drafts this season. I don't have him on any teams. I love Justin Jefferson, though, and I think he's going to be fine. All right. We are awaiting the Washington.WalterPicks creator, Avery. He's going to be joining very soon. Can't wait to have him on. In the meantime, I will try to get to as many of the questions as I can. I do want to talk about Elijah Mitchell. A lot of you got Elijah Mitchell on the waiver wire, and a lot of people that got Elijah Mitchell spent either the top waiver wire priority to get him or a lot of their free agency acquisition. Was it FAB? What's the AA? Free agency acquisition budget. I had it. I don't know why I was second guessing that. A lot of you spent a lot of your FAB on Elijah Mitchell as well. I think Elijah Mitchell is pretty much a must start. I think he's a must start in week 2 if you spent what it cost to go get Elijah Mitchell. If you spent what it cost to go get Elijah Mitchell, why would you not be starting him in week 2? What are you waiting for? That's my thing. I did not get Elijah Mitchell, and I think I only got him in one league, and I'm going to be starting him in that league. But if you spent something to get him, you almost have to why were you spending all that to go get him then? So, it just doesn't make that much sense to me. So I would start Elijah Mitchell for that reason. But I didn't want to spend that much to go get him because I see in the comments here from someone Donagio, man, I'm with you on this one. Never trust the Shanahan running backs. It's not that you don't trust the Shanahan running backs. It's that you don't trust which running back it's going to be. You trust the running backs to succeed because Shanahan does well in scheming for running backs. What he doesn't do well is being easy to predict which running back's going to get the ball in any given week. There's a non-zero chance Trey Sermon out-carries Elijah Mitchell in week 2. I don't think it's going to happen based on what we saw in week 1, obviously. But it can happen. That's something Kyle Shanahan would do. That's why I didn't want to be spending that much on Elijah Mitchell this week. Barkley or Tyson Williams. That's one where you got to start Barkley. And I'm telling a lot of people to bench Barkley tonight. But Tyson Williams is a guy you have to go try to trade right now because Tyson Williams is probably going to be on the waiver wire in most leagues in the next 3 weeks. He's just not going to be consistent enough to be able to start in fantasy football. All right. Trade Tyson Williams for Chase Claypool. Yes. You have to do that. Anyone you can get for Tyson Williams is probably worth it. If you can get, I hate that I have Tyson Williams in so many leagues right now because I've been very publicly saying you got to go trade Tyson Williams, and literally 2 different people that I was in trade negotiations with in the last 48 hours texted me saying, yeah, I just saw what you said about Tyson Williams. I don't want him anymore. But it's true. You should go trade Tyson Williams. And by the way, I'm willing to make that sacrifice for all of your fantasy teams. I'm fine. My fantasy teams are going to be fine, by the way. So I'm not that worried about if Tyson Williams doesn't work out. I'll be fine. But Tyson Williams is a guy you should definitely try to trade if you can. If you can get a guy that's going to be one of your first guys off the bench, or if you can trade a starter with Tyson. One of my favorite trade tactics in fantasy football is taking a guy that's starting in your team and trading him alongside one of your bench players to improve that starting spot. So if you have a guy on your team, say Chase Claypool, and you have Tyson Williams, who you're not going to want to start, and this is probably the best point to sell him all season, then you go offer both Chase Claypool and Tyson Williams for an upgraded wide receiver that you can then start. That's one of my I like getting the best player in trades, which usually also means I like giving away the most players in a trade. I feel like it's a psychological thing for a lot of people too. They're like, oh, I get 2 good players for this one guy, when in reality, the one guy is more valuable than those 2 players combined for fantasy. What channel do you watch the game on? I don't know, man. Whatever channel it's on. I don't watch with the sound on, so it doesn't matter that much to me. I think I saw a clip of Peyton Manning and Eli Manning doing a broadcast, which seems pretty funny to me. But I don't watch with the sound on, so I honestly don't pay that much attention to where I'm watching the games. But I know for sure I have all the games. Thoughts on James Robinson? Oh, why'd you have to go there, Theo, man? We were having such a good time on the stream, and you had to bring up James Robinson, man. I told everyone, if you were listening to me at all before the season, about why I wasn't drafting James Robinson, and I just knew. It was just Urban Meyer. It has been from the get-go just a guy you do not want to be betting on. And he went out and drafted Travis Etienne in the first round. He obviously out for the season before the season even started. And then it came down to James Robinson and Carlos Hyde. And James Robinson splits in half carries with Carlos Hyde. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. Carlos Hyde is getting more snaps in the game than James Robinson had. And this is what I was saying before the season. I just can't get myself to draft James Robinson, and it has nothing to do with James Robinson. James Robinson just had the best undrafted running back season of all time. He just had the best undrafted rookie season, of all time. Undrafted rookie running back season of all time. He's good. James Robinson's good at the game of football, very clearly. And then you have Carlos Hyde. He just turned 31 years old, way past his prime. He's 4 years, maybe more, past his prime. And just because he went to the college, Ohio State, that Urban Meyer used to coach at, we see James Robinson. James Robinson had 5 carries to Carlos Hyde's 9 in a week 1. Carlos Hyde had 2 targets to James Robinson's 6. That's 11 opportunities to 11 opportunities. I mean, how are you gonna look me in the eye, Urban Meyer? And I know you're listening, and say that you're doing the best thing for your football team by giving Carlos Hyde the same amount of work as James Robinson. I mean, you just can't do it. You can't do it. It's just brutal. For everyone that has James Robinson on their fantasy team, I'm sorry, man. It's just, you can't start him. You can't trust him in fantasy when he's splitting work on a horrible offense behind a bad offensive line. And it's just like Carlos Hyde's going to steal touchdowns from James Robinson this season. He's already stealing targets too. It's even worse than I expected. I thought that Carlos Hyde was going to get like 30% of the work and that he was probably going to steal some touchdowns. But not only is he stealing now 50% of the work, he's also stealing targets and touchdowns. I mean, it's just brutal. Those are my thoughts on James Robinson. Thanks for bringing that up. And we got our Washington.WalterPicks creator about to join us. Very excited to have him on and hear his thoughts for the game tonight. And he's going to be joining the TikTok live, the YouTube live. I'm pumped to have him on. Avery, you can go live on TikTok right now, and then I'll bring you onto the YouTube live once you're live on TikTok. We'll hopefully be able to join them both at the same time. But we are joined by, very shortly, Washington.WalterPicks. He's a big Washington football fan, so we're going to get his thoughts as a fan, hopefully his analysis on the game in general as well, because I'm very interested to hear what he thinks, because I really think that Washington is going to destroy the Giants tonight. I am very in on Washington -3, -4. I think it's up to now in terms of the spread. I think that Washington is going to – I also think Washington is going to be a pretty good bet on the money line tonight. I think it's like -180, 170 or something like that. So I don't hate that either. All right. We're about to be live on TikTok and on YouTube. Avery, man, how's it going? Welcome to the TikTok live. Welcome to the YouTube live. How are we doing tonight, man?
What is going on, everybody? This is crazy, bro. I got so much going on with this TikTok and the YouTube at the same time. I'm excited. I don't know how you do it, but it's pretty fun. I'm excited.
Well, this is what I do, Avery. I put both screens right in front of each other. I'm looking at the comment section throughout, but really, like, I'm just talking, man. We're just talking about football, and I want to hear your thoughts on the game tonight. I want to hear what you think about Washington -4, Washington money line tonight. Is there any chance that you see the Washington losing this game? Honestly, I was a little surprised that the spread was this close. Do you think that Washington is a lock tonight against the football team?
I think it should be. I don't really think in any scenario Washington should lose. I know that Daniel Jones plays good against Washington for some reason. I don't think that'll be enough for him to win. I think Washington should win this without a problem.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think that Washington is going to – the defensive line for Washington, how is this Giants offensive line going to be able to keep up with this Washington defensive line? I just do not see a scenario where the Giants offensive line can hold off this Washington defensive line. Is there any chance that Chase Young doesn't eat tonight?
No, Chase Young gets his whatever day that comes. I think he's going to eat up. Our defensive line is going to be perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I agree. I think that Washington covers the spread. What do you think about, though, the guy that I really want to hear your thoughts on, Avery, is a guy that we both liked a ton heading into the season. We both absolutely loved Terry McLaurin heading into this season, and he has a pretty disappointing week 1. I think under 70 receiving yards, which was his average over his career. And then, obviously, Ryan Fitzpatrick, that's a big injury. Are you nervous about Terry McLaurin? Would you bench Terry McLaurin tonight, or are you feeling good about starting him in your fantasy lineups? How do you think he's going to do tonight?
I definitely would not be scared for Terry. He's named Scary Terry for a reason. He's played with worse quarterbacks. He can get it done with whatever quarterback he has to get it done with, especially with the Giants secondary. That's not close to being amazing.
Yeah, don't be scared to start Scary Terry tonight. Scary Terry is going to continue to scare NFL defenses. I mean, Terry McLaurin, all he's really ever done is ball out on the football field. And the thing about Terry McLaurin for me, and it's very similar with Allen Robinson, by the way. A lot of people panicking about Allen Robinson. Don't panic about Allen Robinson. We've seen Allen Robinson succeed in bad offenses with bad quarterbacks. It's the same thing with Terry McLaurin. We've seen Terry McLaurin play with bad quarterbacks and still put up good fantasy numbers. And I actually don't think Taylor Heineke, is it Taylor or Tyler? By the way, I keep saying Tyler. It's Taylor Heineke.
It's Taylor.
Taylor Heineke is not the worst quarterback that Terry McLaurin's ever played with. Like he's not. He's way better than Dwayne Haskins.
Definitely not.
Yeah, so I'm not worried about. I'm really not worried about Terry McLaurin. But what about Antonio Gibson? What about Antonio Gibson? Because Antonio Gibson, another guy, you and I were both extremely high on heading into the season. I know we went on live together before the season, and we both said Antonio Gibson, one of our favorite second-round targets. I actually drafted him, I think, 13th overall in a larger league of mine, which ended up being the first round. How are you feeling about Antonio Gibson tonight against the Giants? Is there any reason anyone should be benching Antonio Gibson? I have him ranked, I think, number 8 in my running back rankings tonight.
I think Antonio Gibson should play great this game. He saw targets, passing targets, and he ran the ball a lot in the first game. That was against the Chargers that had a way better defense. The Giants, their secondary can't keep up. He should be getting passing targets even with that. And then on top of the run game, their defensive line isn't much better. I think he should eat. They're definitely going to run the ball early with Taylor Heineke trying to get, comfortable with the game. I think if you have Antonio Gibson, this is a must start 100%. There's no question with him that he's going to eat tonight.
Yeah, you have to start Antonio Gibson. First of all, good job for drafting him because he was a fantastic draft pick. All offseason, oh no, Antonio Gibson is not playing on third down in the preseason, and he's going to lose out a lot of targets to J.D. McKissic again. But when you watch the preseason games, Avery, and we talked, I think the last time we talked on live was right before that game, and you watch the game, and Antonio Gibson's only playing first and second down, but he's getting targets, and he's getting a lot of targets, and you don't need to play third downs to get targets. He's capable of getting targets first and second downs. So that's an encouraging sign for Antonio Gibson as well. Before I let you go, Avery, I got three more questions for you, but they're quick. Yeah. The first one though is a little bit bigger. How are you feeling about Heineke tonight? Are you nervous for him? Do you feel like he can fill the role that Ryan Fitzpatrick was supposed to fill, or do you think the Washington football team takes a step back tonight because of the backup quarterback?
It definitely is a question because everyone expected Fitzpatrick to play this season and be a better quarterback and better for Terry and everyone else on the team. But I think Heineke will be fine. We saw it in the Bucs game. That was a more of a on-call job than tonight was. He's had a little bit of work. I am a little bit concerned because he hasn't had too many snaps with the offense. Obviously, he was the backup. But, the Giants, they don't have a great defense. So I feel like you really shouldn't worry about him.
Yeah, he's not a guy that I would start in fantasy football, but if you're considering betting on the Washington football team defense, there's the vote of confidence that I was looking for because I like the Washington football team to win today. So I think Taylor Heineke can get it done. He's not that big of a step back from Ryan Fitzpatrick, though I do think Fitzpatrick is better for this offense. All right, is there any sleepers in this game, Avery, to watch out for? Maybe some guys I haven't talked about yet on the live, or just some guys kind of out of the headlines, but that could have a big game tonight?
I do like Sterling Shepard this game. I feel like the only place that Washington can be beat is in the slot. And I feel like it's just I have some feeling that he might, out of all the receivers, out of all the offensive pieces, I feel like he would be the one to go crazy. I would say Antonio Gibson, but I don't think that should be a sleeper to anybody personally.
Yeah, Sterling Shepard shouldn't be a sleeper to anyone either after his week 1 performance. But I agree with you, Avery, because if you go back and watch the Washington game and the Giants game from week 1. First of all, the Washington game, the Chargers had such a good game plan where they were throwing the ball so fast on so many plays to the slot, to Keenan Allen, to the outside receivers, but really quickly. They were top 3 in the NFL in terms of their time to release of the ball. That was Justin Herbert just clearly making an effort to throw the ball fast so that the Washington defensive line just couldn't be as big of a factor. And that is the role Sterling Shepard has for the Giants. So, yeah, I'd like him for that reason. 2, if you look at how the Giants went week 1, that was Sterling Shepard's role. He's running the short and intermediate routes in that offense in week 1. So, yeah, I like him a lot. I'm certainly rooting for him, too. I had him on a lot of my best ball teams. So I'm rooting for Sterling Shepard. But overall, I think I'm rooting for Washington tonight. I got some money on Washington tonight. I like Antonio Gibson and Scary Terry a lot on a bunch of my different fantasy teams. So I'm rooting for Washington tonight. Avery, the last question I got for you before I let you go, man. How are you feeling about your 32-team roster? You're in the 32-person fantasy league for all 32 of our TikTok creators on TikTok. How are you feeling about your team? How did week 1 go?
Yeah, week 1 was fine. It was all right, I did lose, but I didn't have a quarterback. And before I start, I do want to say we never want to see injuries in this league. It's horrible. No one loves to see it. But I did have Heineke on my bench, and I for sure will be starting him this week. So, I'm rooting for Heineke more than I already would. So
that's big. That's a really big deal in a super flex 32-person league.
Yeah,
you need to be able to start a quarterback. I knew that was going to be a big thing heading into the season. And RIP to whoever drafted Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I know we had someone draft Cam Newton before Cam Newton was cut too. I mean, so there's going to be some brutal quarterback losses in this league. But the season's just begun, Avery. So you're still far away from the Waffle House. So you still have plenty of time left. Avery, thanks for hopping on. And it was great talking with you. We'll definitely hop on live again soon. I will just reiterate what Avery, our Washington.WalterPicks content creator, was saying on the stream. He thinks that Washington's a lock tonight, as do I. The defense is going to feast against the Giants' offensive line. He's also not that worried about Terry McLaurin, and he thinks Antonio Gibson is going to feast tonight. And I'm all aboard the Antonio Gibson feasting tonight train as well. I think you've got to start Antonio Gibson. Should we start Barkley, Sam? Parker, first of all, thanks for tuning in, man. And no, I don't think you should start Saquon Barkley this week. I think Saquon Barkley is a guy I would want to bench. If I had the guys to bench Saquon Barkley, I would bench Saquon Barkley. And honestly, I don't think it takes that much. Someone asked earlier, Saquon Barkley or Marvin Jones. I would probably go with Marvin Jones. And it doesn't feel good for me to say that, but I would go Sterling Shepard over Saquon Barkley. God, I can't, here we are, week 2. But this is also, we knew this was possible with Saquon Barkley at the beginning of the season. Hold on to Saquon Barkley. But still, you got to feel okay about benching him in week 2. He only had 10 carries, 3 targets in week 1. We're about to have our Giants.WalterPicks creator come on the show as well. Josh Fish is about to hop on, and I want to hear his Giants thoughts because I've done a lot of trashing on the Giants in this live stream so far. I do think Washington's going to win tonight, and we will see if he can change my mind. We're going to see. And so, Josh, when you're ready, you can go live on TikTok. You'll hop on the TikTok live, then I'll add you onto the YouTube live as well. Pumped to hear your thoughts. All right, should I trade Kamara and Beasley for Terry, Gibson, and Higgins? No, don't trade away Alvin Kamara. You're getting Antonio Gibson back, which is good, but you're giving away by far the best player in the trade. Alvin Kamara he's going to have a chance, guys. Alvin Kamara has a chance this season to see the most touches he sees in his entire career. That's what it looked like week 1. Zeke or Gibson? That's a tough one. I don't want to bench Antonio Gibson tonight. I also don't want to bench Zeke, though. I would try to find a way to start both those guys. I don't know how you could possibly not be able to start both those guys. Put these comments into the Walter app. Ooh, that's an interesting one, man. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing about the live streams and a lot of the comments. You can answer almost every single question that you ask in the WalterPicks app. And a lot of people that are commenting already probably have analyzed in the app, but in the WalterPicks app on the iOS App Store, you're getting start-sit comparisons that give you boom and bust projections for every player based on 10,000 simulations of the week. You're getting just median projections for every single player, the most accurate that are out there based on machine learning. And then you're also getting Trade Analyzer that can help you answer all of your trade questions. And then you're also getting DraftKings and FanDuel advice with our lineup optimizer and player prop advice. So you're getting so much. So try out the WalterPicks app in the iOS App Store. And all the things that cost money, by the way, you get to use everything for free up to a point. But all the things that cost money, you get a free 7-day trial to try it out. So test out the free trial, see if it's worth it. All right. I can't answer almost all of these questions. Should I trade James Robinson and Corey Davis for Aaron Jones? Roman, you need to go hit accept on that trade. Don't pause what you're doing, Roman. Sprint to the trade button and hit accept because this trade is amazing for you. James Robinson and Corey Davis for Aaron Jones all day long, man, all day long. All right. I will, Josh, I will invite you to the stream. Give me 1 second. All right. You should be live. So you can join the TikTok live. And we are live on YouTube, Josh.
Whoa.
How's it going?
Live on YouTube and TikTok.
turn the TikTok volume down as low as you can. They will still be able to hear you. Josh, thanks for hopping on, man. I am very excited to talk with you. Do you? Well, I want to get right into it, man. Do you have any hope for the Giants tonight in week 2?
I do have some hope. You know, it's prime time. We're playing Washington, and we have owned Washington the past 2 seasons. And I'm not scared of Heineke. I think he's inaccurate. Like, yeah, he's got some tough runs in him, but I would be way more scared of Fitzpatrick, if I'm being honest. So
yeah, I agree.
We
just had Washington WalterPicks on Avery, and he also agreed. Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick's certainly better than Heineke, and I certainly wouldn't debate that. Heineke was undrafted in 2015. He's played though a few times now, and he's done okay in those games. He had the last time he played in week 1. I mean, when he came in, he really wasn't off the charts, but he did complete 73% of his passes. In the previous games that he played, he was more like a 63% completion percentage. So he really isn't like amazingly accurate, but I think he can get the job done. The big question I have though, Josh, is how the Giants offensive line is going to perform tonight against the Washington defensive line. Like, I honestly could see a scenario where Washington wins this game with 0 offensive points. Like, to me, that's how bad it could be for this matchup. It's one of the toughest matchups, I think, of the week in terms of one team's strength versus another team's weakness. Do you have any hope for this offensive line? And how do you think they looked week 1?
That's everyone is talking about, just like Chase Young and Washington against our O-line. And it's scary. There were some plays week 1 where our tackle literally didn't even block Von Miller.
1 second, Josh. Sounds like we're having some audio issues on the TikTok stream. Maybe the speaker on your phone, I think, is coming with some static. Maybe we can disconnect from the TikTok stream if we need to.
All right.
See.
I
think it's okay. I think it might be okay now.
It's better now.
Yeah, it's better. Thank you, TikTok stream, for letting me know. Sorry. Keep going. What are your thoughts on the Giants' offensive line and how they looked in week 1? Do they have any hope against this pretty elite Washington front seven?
Yeah, I mean, there was this one play, Matt Pert literally didn't move and Von Miller was past him. So I'm pretty scared about that. But I do think they're gonna game plan. They know they're coming. They're gonna try to get it out of Daniel Jones' hands as fast as possible. Try to run so that pass rush can't get to him, and hopefully get Danny Dimes on the move, because I think his legs are underrated. Aside from that trip, he is fast and he can run pretty well as long as he doesn't fumble. That's the big thing. But
what do you think of Saquon Barkley, though? Is Saquon Barkley going to get more than he had 10 carries, 3 targets in week 1? Do you think he sees similar numbers to that tonight or more than that?
So I think they're going to increase them slightly. I don't think he'll see his full workload just yet. It is a short week. He's still coming back from injury, and the worst thing that could happen is him to get severely injured again. But it is week 2, and he wants to play. So I think they're going to give him some more touches. And hopefully they give it to him in space, because Jason Garrett just hates a good offense, I think, because they just give it to him running down the middle. Put him in space and let him make people miss. And he's a freak. Let him do his thing. It's so frustrating.
Seriously, I agree with you on that point. What is wrong? I did not understand why there wasn't even discussions about Jason Garrett losing his job last season. I mean, he really didn't do a good job last season. And why is Jason Garrett still a thing in the end? He clearly is not scheming a great offense for his best players. But I agree. I mean, they got to get Saquon Barkley in space. Saquon Barkley, the most athletic, arguably the most athletic player in the NFL. I would argue he's the most athletic running back of all time. And he's just the Giants and Jason Garrett specifically. Jason Garrett, we know you're listening. You got to give the ball to Saquon Barkley in space, man. It's it's really not
so
not that hard. I want to hear your thoughts about the spread tonight. The Washington football team are 4-point favorites. I like Washington -4. I did put a little bit on it. What are you thinking about the spread? Which way would you go in terms of -4 for the Washington football team?
One thing the Giants were good at doing last year was covering the spread. I think their last 6 games they covered, or a lot of the games they covered. And anytime I got a notification today, like 70% of people have bet Washington minus 3.5.
Oh no, I don't want to
Anytime I
hear
see
that.
that,
I don't like
I
that.
fade it every time because it's just like Vegas knows, Vegas always knows. So I bet Giants with the spread tonight.
There were a lot of games like that, by the way, in week one. Vegas made bank in week one, and it was mostly because like 80% of the money was on one side in so many of these games. So yeah, I don't like to hear that, the majority of the money is on Washington, but I mean, there's, I think, a valid reason for that tonight. I did the strength versus the weakness for me is a big deal. I am really interested though to see how Daniel Jones does. To me though, like part of this game is also about their week one matchups and how good the teams that each of the teams played in week one. And the Chargers, I think, are very good. I mean, I was impressed with how they did in that game, and I just don't think the Giants offense is anywhere near as good as the Chargers offense. So I do like the Giants to lose tonight by more than 4 points. But I do want to hear how you think Daniel Jones is going to do. I mean, what are your expectations for Daniel Jones tonight? You said you think he's going to be on the move a lot. I certainly could see that as well. I don't know if that's going to be by design or by necessity, but how are you feeling about Daniel Jones tonight?
I think he'll be on the move. I think he should over on the rush yards for a bet. If I'm being honest, I think he'll definitely have at least one turnover. I really hope he doesn't, but it's just what he's been doing.
Rational Giants fan. We gotta love rational fans, man. You gotta love rational fans.
I want to see him throw the ball downfield more. First play of the Denver game, or really first drive, deep ball, perfect. And then they just went away from that. And I don't Jason Garrett really frustrates me because Danny Dimes is good at the deep ball, and yet they kind of refuse to throw it as much as they should.
Yeah, we talked about this before the season, Josh, when we went live together. It was really one of the only strong parts of Daniel Jones' game last season was the deep ball. He was top 12 in the league in deep ball completion percentage. You just look at the numbers. He was really the only stat that really popped off the page to me when I went back and looked at it. And Daniel Jones, rushing prop, by the way, tonight, 25.5 is what I'm seeing. I mean, that seems pretty beatable to me. Also, the Saquon Barkley rushing prop is at 44.5. I mean, oh man, and I don't feel good about it either. I mean, that's one 10. If he sees 10 carries, he's probably not going to go over 45 yards. But if he sees 15 carries, he almost definitely will. It's just tough to project the volume for Saquon Barkley right now, which is why I'd recommend him as a bench if you have a decent option. But I also understand wanting to start your first few round picks in the first couple of weeks of the season. It's just a tough situation for Saquon right now.
It's crazy too because he could beat that yards in one carry. His rookie year, he had 8 or 9 over 40 plus yard runs. If he gets the space, he can really just be amazing. It's just
100%.
Their O-line and Garrett, it's tough.
I would not be surprised if Saquon Barkley beat this prop in one play.
Yeah.
Seriously, I wouldn't be surprised. But he could also not even come close to it in 10 plays. This is the conundrum with Saquon Barkley right now and this season. I wonder. The last question I have for you, actually, there's 2 questions I got left for you before I let you go, Josh. Thanks for hopping on. I want to hear your thoughts on one sleeper that you have in this game. Maybe one guy we haven't talked about yet, or one guy that's not in the forefront of the headlines right now, but you think could have a pretty big game tonight.
Mm-hmm. Well, one guy that I actually own in the 32-man league is Sterling Shepard. He's still only rostered in 62% of leagues. I was just looking it up, and he's Danny's kind of go-to guy, kind of evident based on week one, and especially PPR. I love him for tonight. They might be down, they're gonna have to throw a lot, and
what about Kenny Galladay? Do you have any hope for Kenny Galladay tonight? He really didn't have a great week one. I had a comment up on YouTube. Should you start Kenny Galladay?
I'm starting Kenny Galladay in my leagues. I'm feeling. Basically what I saw in the fourth quarter is what showed me. Daniel Jones realized I can just throw it to Galladay and he's gonna catch it. His last few drives, he had probably 4 or 5 catches, contested, very good tough catches that he made the play. So as they build that Rappaport, because he missed all of preseason, I think his targets and his catches and all his stats are gonna go up. And I think they're going to be trying to throw the ball a lot tonight.
Yeah,
So
the exciting part to me about Kenny Golladay, and I went back and watched that Giants game a couple of days ago. He looked healthy. I mean, this was the big thing, right? Like, he looked healthy, and that really was the only thing I cared about week 1 for Kenny Golladay. He also had 90 air yards, like you said, on a lot of his targets. Like, it was pretty clear. Oh yeah, that's Kenny Golladay. So like, I'll just give him a chance, and we're going to see plenty of those plays tonight too. So I don't hate that. I would start Kenny Golladay over Sterling Shepard tonight. By the way, you and Avery, our Washington WalterPicks creator, who was just on, you both named Sterling Shepard as your sleeper for tonight.
That's
so,
cool.
I mean, I guess you got to lock in Sterling Shepard as the sleeper. And I mentioned him before either of you guys came on too, as a guy that I think he does fit well into the scheme of how I think this game could go, with Washington getting to the quarterback quickly. And the way that Sterling Shepard functions in his offense is the short and intermediate routes. So I could see him doing well in that role, specifically tonight against a good defensive line. All right, the last question I got for you, Josh, before I let you go, man. How are you feeling about your team in the 32-person fantasy league after week 1?
Yeah, so I started week 1 2-0. I actually beat Avery. Like,
I didn't realize that.
Beat him pretty badly. So I was feeling really good. I had a post about my team, was getting a lot of love, but unfortunately I had Jerry Jeudy, so that really sucked, losing him. Thank God it wasn't season ending. It looked like season ending, but it's still 4 to 6 weeks without. It was my 3rd round pick, and in a league that you really need depth, it's tough. But I've picked up some guys I think could hold me over for missing him, and I haven't had Evan Ingram yet, and I still think he could be very solid with that 2-point tight end bonus.
He's out
so
tonight, right?
I still feel all right. So not as good as I did with Jeudy, but I'm feeling good. 2-0.
Evan Ingram's out tonight, right?
Yeah, he's out.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But he should be back week 3.
2-0 though is exactly how you wanted to start, and why you're 2-0 after week 1. Just to quickly explain to people, the way that this league works to ensure that nobody accidentally or luckily wins this league, or luckily loses or unluckily loses this league, is every single week you have your matchup, but you also are scored against in a separate matchup the median score of the week across all 32 teams. So if you finish in the top half of the league, you get an extra win every single week. This is like to make sure you don't have the second fewest points in the league and then get one win in like, just, I don't like that rule in fantasy. Yeah. So if you, especially with this many teams and with such a critical last place punishment and first place prize. So in this league, you get 2 chances to win and 2 chances to lose every single week. You got to finish in the top half of the league for that additional win or loss. All right, Josh.
I highly recommend every league do that because I think it's a great rule.
Yeah,
there's so many times you get screwed over with the scoring going off, but the person you played also went off.
100%. There's a lot of interesting rules in this 32-person league that a lot of different people are taking advantage of. But 2-0, man. We'll see where we're at next time we hop on the live, see if you can overcome the injury. But Josh, thanks for hopping on, man. Good luck tonight, and hopefully we do see Saquon Barkley break this prop in one play.
Yes, I would love that.
Awesome, Josh. Have a good one, man. Thanks for hopping on. We have heard from Giants.WalterPicks. We've heard from Washington.WalterPicks, and my opinions have not changed. My opinions really have not been that changed. I still believe that Washington is going to do very well. I spelled Shepard wrong. Is Shepard with 2 P's? Definitely not 2 P's. I really think that the Giants are going to struggle tonight, guys. The Giants' weakness is their offensive line, and the Washington football team's strength is their defensive line. It's just not a good matchup for them. Daniel Jones is undefeated against Washington, so I'm going against some history here by saying this. But I would be surprised if the Giants won tonight. I do think the Washington's going to win. All right, I'm going to try to go. We got like 10 minutes left in the stream, so I'm just going to go rapid fire at the comments. I'm going to try to answer as many comments as I can over the next 10 minutes. Seriously, guys, thanks for tuning in, especially you guys that have been tuned in for a while on the stream. We're heading on hour 2 of this live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Hit the like button and subscribe button and the follow button if you haven't hit those buttons yet. But all right, let's get to some of the questions. Washington -3 is a lock. Yeah, DJV, agreed. I honestly, -4 I think is good, but -3 is a lock. Kirk or Golladay? I would probably go Golladay. I got to sit one. DK, Ridley, Cooper, Kupp. You got to sit Kupp in that situation. Hurts or Rodgers? I would go Hurts. Oh, I want to go Hurts, but it's close, man. And you see my top 10 QBs. I have Rodgers a few spots ahead of Hurts. If you're watching live on YouTube, again, on the YouTube live, you can see my top 10 rankings on the screen. I want to go Hurts, but I'd probably go Rodgers, Ravi. Rodgers is going to just have a massive blow-up game against the Lions. I also think Aaron Jones, though, could have a really big game. Kelsey and Lockett for Waller and Allen Robinson. Whoa. Kelsey and Lockett for Waller and no, I still keep the Kelsey side. By the way, I mean, tip of the cap to the WalterPicks app this preseason, ranking Darren Waller well ahead of George Kittle. That was clearly correct, but Kelsey's still in his own tier. Darren Waller, I still don't think in the Travis Kelce tier, though. Like, he saw 19 targets in week 1. You got to realize that the drop off in tight ends, like the vast majority of tight ends in this league, probably all but like 10 of them, aren't going to hit 19 targets across the season until like week 4 or 5. And Darren Waller did it in week 1. 19 targets, 10 catches, 100. Like he's putting up wide receiver 1 numbers. They both are. So maybe they are in the same tier, but I don't expect him to get that many targets every week. I do think Kelsey's still better than him, though. Kelsey still has in a much better offense. DJ Moore or Antonio Brown. Go with DJ Moore. DJ Moore is almost a must start this week for me. He honestly might make my must start list on the Sunday morning live stream because DJ Moore has always dominated the Saints. Like, he just dominates the Saints. Marshawn Lattimore cannot guard DJ Moore, and he actually had a pretty good week 1. I don't hate DJ Moore. I also like Antonio Brown, obviously. I think Antonio Brown has a higher ceiling. I'm going to say that for almost every Antonio Brown question. He probably has a higher ceiling than the guy you're deciding between. So if you're trying to go for ceiling, like there's Antonio Brown is one of these guys that can win you your fantasy week every week. All right. Paolo, Sam, Damian Harris, Devonta Smith, Chase Claypool, or was that it? Sam, let me scroll back up here. Devonta Smith, Chase Claypool, Damian Harris. Yeah, I'd probably go Devonta Smith. I'd probably go Devonta Smith over Claypool and over Damian Harris. I'm a little nervous about Damian Harris, I have to be honest. And Damian Harris is a guy I drafted in a lot of best ball leagues. He was one of my most drafted running backs in fantasy football this season. I was pretty confident he was going to get 20-plus carries in week 1. And there you go, week 1, 20-plus carries. But the way that game ended is so bad for Damian Harris. It really could not have been a worse ending. It really couldn't have been a worse ending for Damian Harris. And there's valid concerns for him right now. So I wouldn't be starting him this week. Though he could easily see 20-plus carries. Are you worried about Ridley? No, I'm not worried about Calvin Ridley, guys. Start Calvin Ridley. Don't trade away Calvin Ridley. If anything, trade for Calvin Ridley. Will Trey Sermon start having more involvement in the you said Saints, but it's the 49ers offense? Yeah, I think he will. I think Trey Sermon has a good chance to carve out a role. The way that Kyle Shanahan works, too, it's not that much different than how Bill Belichick used to work with the Patriots. Like, it might be hard to predict which running back's gonna lead that backfield in touches each week. Someone's asking free prop pick for tonight. I don't have a free prop pick for tonight, but I got to tell you, I love Antonio Gibson. And we heard from Giants at WalterPicks, he really liked the Daniel Jones rushing prop. I thought that one was pretty interesting. And I like the Giants tonight, but Daniel Jones is going to be on the move, whether by scheme or just by force tonight. And his over-under in terms of rushing, 25.5 is what I'm seeing. Like, that's only a few carries. Like, he could do that with 3 carries. And I think he's going to have more than 3 rushing attempts. So I don't hate that. 25.5 rushing yards for Daniel Jones if you're going to take a prop tonight. We do have one prop, though, in the WalterPicks app on the iOS App Store. Zeke, worry or hold? I think you do both. I think you do both with Ezekiel Elliott. You should be worried about Zeke, but you definitely should be holding Zeke. And honestly, personally, I'm not that worried about Ezekiel Elliott. I think he's going to be just fine. He played a lot in week 1. Obviously, the matchup was not good in week 1 against arguably the best rushing defense in the NFL. And there were so many encouraging signs for Ezekiel Elliott in week 1. The offense looked good. Arguably, top 3 points upside for the Dallas Cowboys this season. They could easily finish top 3 in points scored. And that's good for Zeke. That means he could be top 3 in touchdowns. Like, it's pretty a one-to-one correlation there. He didn't score a touchdown in week 1. And I don't know how many more games there's going to be without a Zeke touchdown, honestly. He saw only 11 carries, 2 targets, but he did see still 65% of the opportunity in the backfield. Like, I think we're more used to closer to a 75% opportunity share for Zeke than the 65% he saw in week 1. It was still 16th highest in the league, but he saw 83% of the snaps. So he saw 83% of the snaps. I think the opportunity share is going to be closer to 75% over the course of the season, and I do think he's going to score some touchdowns. The worrying part for Zeke, though, week 1, was that Pollard did steal a decent amount of targets from him. And like the target ceiling might not be as high as it used to be for Zeke. He used to catch a lot of passes. And now Tony Pollard, week 1, he got 4 targets. Like that's 4 targets that Zeke did not get. So that alone is a tiny bit concerning. All right, guys. We are going to be wrapping up the TikTok live, but I always go live for like 5 minutes longer on YouTube and try to answer all the comments I can. The reason for this, the comment section on YouTube is a little less spammy. It's like a little easier for me to answer comments. I can also pull up the comments on the screen really easily. So head over to the YouTube live if there's still some comments that you're trying to get answered at WalterPicks on YouTube. Link is also in our bio. But if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, thanks for tuning in. Good luck tonight. And we are, I think, collectively, hopefully, rooting for the Washington football team, who I think is going to win handedly tonight. Have a good one, guys. All right, guys, we are live on YouTube to finish up. As always, let's get to some of these comments. It's been a fun live stream, man. I'm pumped we got to have a couple of our content creators on too. All right, Kruby here. How's it going, Kruby? We are going to try to get to this question. Oh, I lost it. Let's see. Hit subscribe, Ben Slonaker, man. Hit that subscribe button. What are we waiting for? If you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, you got to hit that subscribe button ASAP, man. It takes you 2 seconds. It's like right down here somewhere, I think. Hit the subscribe button. Okay. Saquon or Singletary? Well, Saquon, I'm not so sure about. Saquon, though, is the guy I would be playing over Singletary. I would play Saquon over Singletary. Though I don't love Saquon tonight, I'm telling the majority of people to bench Saquon. I would still probably play him over Devin Singletary. Sam, should I start Debo or AB? App says AB. Oh, this is a tough one. I mean, Debo Samuel, monster week one game. And it's hard to bench a guy after a game like that. Though Antonio Brown also had a monster week 1 game. And I think Antonio Brown's week 1 game, honestly, is what I would expect to be more consistent than, Debo Samuel, 12 targets. He turned 12 targets into 100, not 100 yards. He turned 12 targets he scored a touchdown, 9 catches, 189 receiving yards. The second most yards in the league, only behind Tyreek Hill. Just insane from Debo Samuel week 1. I don't think he's going to be able to put those type of numbers up consistently. And I know that it's hard to bench someone after a week like that. But the Eagles just went up against the Falcons. And Calvin really didn't do that well. And Antonio Brown, the Buccaneers are, I think, in a much better matchup week 2. So I would probably go with Antonio Brown as well. Though I understand it being close. I think it's a good question. They're up against the Falcons. So, I would go with Antonio Brown. The Falcons can't stop anyone, man. Antonio Brown's going to catch at least 1 touchdown. All right. Kirby here. Do I trade Herbert and Thielen for Hurts and McLaurin rated 5 stars in the iOS App Store? Thanks, man. I do appreciate it. Herbert and Thielen for Hurts and McLaurin. This is an interesting one. I think as of right now, and if I pull up my top 10 quarterbacks for this week, I think this is pretty clear too. I like Justin Herbert more than Jalen Hurts right now. And I think that across the season too, Herbert's better than Hurts. But I still like Jalen Hurts. I think I love what we saw from Jalen Hurts. I think week 2 is going to be a big sign for him though. Like we knew he was going to do well against the Falcons. He was the lock of the week last week if you tuned into the Sunday Live. But I still like Herbert more than Jalen Hurts. That being said, I also like McLaurin more than Thielen. I don't think it's close enough, though, Kirby. This is like a pretty fair trade that I would probably hold off on for now. McLaurin is a guy I like, but Thielen is also a guy that, like, all he does is score touchdowns. Every single season, it's like, all right, there's no way Adam Thielen can maintain the same touchdown efficiency that he has every single season. And here we are again, Adam Thielen. I think he scored twice, right? Twice in week 1. I'm pulling this up now. He definitely scored at least once. You pull up Thielen's stats from week 1. He's got 2 touchdowns. It's just insane. 92 yards, 2 touchdowns week 1. He had 10 targets in week 1. I think you got to keep Thielen for now. And I do think it's a decent time to sell Thielen and a decent time to buy McLaurin. But personally, Kirby, I'd hold off on this one. All right. Let's take a look at some final comments. Guys, if you're just tuning in, by the way, hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. All right, Jerky-O, man, thanks for tuning in. Again, pick one, Deontay Higgins, Mooney, Brian Edwards. Yeah, I think in order here, Jerky-O. You got the order here correct. I would go Deontay Johnson, then Higgins, then Mooney, then Brian Edwards. So, man, what a game for the Raiders in Brian Edwards, who had 0 yards heading into the last drive of the 4th quarter. And then he ends up with 50 yards and almost has the game-winning touchdown. Thoughts on Josh Jacobs? Yeah, Marino. This is a good one to answer because I think you need to be trading away Josh Jacobs if you have him. Josh Jacobs scored a lucky 2 touchdowns. I wouldn't say lucky 2 touchdowns, but lucky in the sense where he's not going to score 2 touchdowns in most games. And he only had, I think it was 50%. Let me pull the numbers up again so I don't say any incorrect numbers here. But Josh Jacobs, he had 10 carries. Yeah, that's what I thought. 10 carries. I mean, that's not what you should not be excited about week 1 for Josh Jacobs. You should be happy he did well for your fantasy team, still 17 points because he scored 2 touchdowns. But he picked up an injury. He only saw 10 carries. We confirmed that the Raiders' offensive line is not very good. So, like, what's the exciting part about Josh Jacobs? He also split snaps with Kenyon Drake, who stole some targets, as expected. So, yeah, I would trade away Josh Jacobs. I would trade him away. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I would start Darrell Henderson, Kyle, over Saquon Barkley. I really don't love Saquon tonight. I would go with Kenny Golladay over Sterling Shepard personally because I think that Kenny Golladay has the higher ceiling. But I think Sterling Shepard has the safer floor. And Sterling Shepard, to me, his role in this offense fits well into how I think this game's going to go. Because I think the Washington defensive line is going to destroy the Giants' offensive line. And Sterling Shepard does run those short and intermediate routes. Like, it might be hard for Golladay to even get down the field before Daniel Jones is under serious pressure tonight. So I think Golladay is the higher ceiling. Honestly, I think it's a Golladay when I first answered this question. Shepard's much safer. So if you're trying to lock in some points on Thursday night, I'd go with Shepard. If you're trying to win your week, though, on Thursday night, then I'd probably go with Golladay. Hopefully that makes sense. AB or Julio, I'm benching Julio Jones for now, Zach. He had 0 separation in week 1, none, against a bad secondary. That's concerning. So, and Antonio Brown looked great, Zach. So don't have any fear starting AB over it's Julio Jones. AB and Lockett for A.J. Brown and Terrace Marshall, fair trade. Yeah, it's fair. I'd like the Antonio Brown side more. I mean, Antonio Brown and Lockett looked great in week 1. Obviously, it's just week 1, and we shouldn't overreact from week 1, and A.J. Brown's still better than both of them in fantasy football. So it's a fair trade. The Terrace Marshall piece really does nothing for me, though. I mean, he's kind of just a throw in the straight. All right. Pick 1 RB and 1 flex. Tim Patrick, Brian Edwards, Jacoby Myers, James White, Hines, Javonte Williams. Love the content, man. JJ, you got so many guys to choose from, man. I would probably go with Tim Patrick or James White. I honestly don't love Jacoby Myers this week or Brian Edwards. I think Hines is an interesting option too. I like James White as a pretty good sleeper play, though. If there's one guy that the Patriots right now feel good about in their backfield, it's James White. I mean, he's really the only guy that did fumble in the backfield in week 1. He had a good receiving role in week 1, and Mac Jones is going to continue to dump it off to James White, but he wasn't just dumping it off. Mac Jones' clear best throw of the day was like a 30-yard bomb to James White, like perfect over the shoulder pass. James White, week 1, he played 35% of the snaps, but he had 7 targets. That was the 5th most in the NFL. So he had 6 catches, which was the 4th most in the NFL, 50 yards. I mean, he had 12 fantasy points week 1. So I don't hate it. I really don't hate the James White play. But I'd probably go with Tim Patrick. I think Tim Patrick's going to do well with the Jerry Jeudy injury. Which linebacker are you starting? It's Swift for me still, but you can definitely start Jamal Williams too. I think Jamal Williams is clearly going to have a big role. And Jamal Williams, it's a hashtag revenge week for Jamal Williams too. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Guys, I'll be back live, as always, Sunday morning. I'll be live pretty much from when I wake up to around kickoff. The live will usually start by 9 a.m. Eastern. Usually, I think I started last Sunday at 8:30. I was very excited, though. I woke up very early last Sunday. Hopefully, we're live by 9 a.m., though, Sunday, and we're obviously going to go right up till kickoff. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. Turn that notification button on, too. Good luck tonight in Thursday night football, and have a good rest of your night. We'll talk soon, guys.